Good afternoon and welcome to today's proceeding of the Senate, this being the 21st day of July 2020. This broadcast is brought to you by the Parliamentary Broadcasting Unit in conjunction with the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. The broadcast is available on KBC Channel 1 as well as Senate TV. This afternoon, the Honorable Senator for Nyandarua County, Senator Mwangi Paul Githiomi, will present in the Senate a petition concerning resettlement of internally displaced persons, otherwise known as IDPs, living in Nyandarua County. Senator Dr. Michael Mbito will also present a petition to the Senate by pensioners under the Kenya Railway Staff Retirement Benefit Scheme concerning the looming collapse of the scheme due to mismanagement and psychological torture arising from non-payment of benefits. The Speaker of the Senate will present to the Senate a petition by the Makueni County Assembly Committee on Environment and Climate Change regarding the adverse effects of rock blasting for the construction of Thwake Dam. The Senate Majority Leader will present or lay on the table of the Senate two papers. One, the County Government's Budget Implementation Review Report for the first 9 months of financial year 2019-2020, and the Crops, Sugar, Import, Export, and Byproducts Regulations of 2020. Those papers will be laid on the table of the Senate this afternoon by the Senate Majority Leader. And pursuant to Standing Order 47-1, nominated Senator Dr. Alice Milgo will make a statement regarding the appointment of Senator Dr. Gertrude Musuruve Inima to the position of co-chair of the International Parliamentary Network on Education. The Senator for Trans Nzoia County, Senator Dr. Michael Mbito, will make a statement regarding alleged misappropriation of the health and COVID-19 funds and the general deterioration of the health sector in Trans Nzoia County. The Senator for Vihiga County, Senator George Kaniri, will make a statement regarding handling of the COVID-19 situation in the country. And pursuant to Standing Order 48-1, senators who will seek statements, among them the Senator Beatrice Kwamboka, who will seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Land, Environment and Natural Resources concerning pollution of the environment by industrial emissions. Nominated Senator Bshiro Halake will seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Land, Environment and Natural Resources concerning the status of automation of land registries and general land records. Other senators who will seek statements include the Senator for Mombasa County, Senator Mwinyi Mohamed Faki, Senator for Nairobi County, Senator Johnson Sakaja, the Senator for Taita Taveta County, Senator Jonas Maruma, the Senator for Bungoma County, Senator Moses Wekitangula, will also seek a statement this afternoon, and the statement will be sought from the Standing Committee on Education concerning payment of salaries to teachers serving in private schools following the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic in Kenya. Other senators who will seek statements include nominated Senator Isaac Maura, nominated Senator Abshiro Laki will also seek another statement, as well as the Senator for Nandi County, and the Senator will seek two statements, one from the Committee on Health and the other one from the Committee of Energy. If you're just joining us, this is the live proceeding of the Senate on this 21st day of July 2020. The Honorable Speaker of the Senate, Kenneth Makelo Lusaka, has stepped into the chambers now. I will hand you over for this live broadcast courtesy of KBC and PBO. My name is Edward Kabasa. Good afternoon.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we beseech you to behold with your abundant favor and blessings as your servants, whom you have been pleased to call to leadership positions in this republic. We seek guidance to treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of our country and of those whose interests you have committed to our charge. Amen.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions.
Senator Mwangi Kidiomi.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I wish to table a petition from IDPs who are living in Nyandarua. Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 233 to present this petition on behalf of the petitioners. Mr. Speaker, I have tabled the petition with a sense of sadness and disappointment. It is unfortunate that 12 years after the post-election violence, there are people who still have not been settled. The sanctity of life and property is protected by the Constitution under the Bill of Rights, and yet we are talking of people who lost everything that they had, their homes, their properties, and even their livelihood. These people have been living in office corridors, at the town public parks, and some even in forest reserves in very dire conditions. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is the fundamental duty of the state to respect, protect, and address the needs of the most vulnerable groups in the society as provided for in Article 21(1)(3) of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, I don't understand why the government has taken this long to resettle and even compensate these people. Does the government not care about the plight of the people? The only offense that these people did was to exercise their political rights as guaranteed in Article 38 of the Constitution. Why then would the same government that they elected and also subsequent governments cannot resettle them once and for all, or are they not a priority to government? Mr. Speaker, sir, these people have continued living in very inhumane conditions. For the last 12 years, they have been stripped of their dignity, and whereas Article 28 of the Constitution guarantees their dignity, it is clear that the government has not done enough to better their lives, to better the lives of these people and alleviate their suffering. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is our cardinal responsibility as the elected members of this honorable House to address issues that are affecting our constituents. It is my humble prayer that the plight of these people will be addressed with haste so that we can restore their dignity, their faith in us as their leaders, and also the government itself. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, we'll go to the next petition, then we will make the comments together once we are done. Okay. Senator Mbito. Huh? Is it the other side? Okay, as he comes, I'll present one that I'm supposed to present. So I hereby report, you can sit. I hereby report to the Senate that a petition has been submitted through the clerk by Mr. Robert Musyoka, acting clerk, Makueni County Assembly, on behalf of the Sectoral Committee on Environment and Climate Change. As you are aware, under Article 1191 of the Constitution, and I quote, every person has a right to petition Parliament to consider any matter within its authority, including enacting, amending, and repealing any legislation. Honorable Senators, the salient issues raised in the said petition are: one, that the petitioners, Sectoral Committee on Environment and Climate Change, have concluded the matter of the request for a statement regarding the adverse effects of rock blasting of the ongoing construction of the Thwake Multipurpose Dam in Kalawa Ward, Makueni County, and has not been able to resolve the problem conclusively, as the matter is affecting more than one county, having been funded and implemented by the national government. That the construction of the dam involves, among its other activities, blasting of rocks, which has adversely impacted on the lives of the residents of nearby villages, such as houses and shops, cracking, thus posing danger to the occupants of such structures. Other adverse effects of the rock blasting in the area include noise pollution and respiratory problems to the residents. That the affected areas include, but not limited to, Ndindi, Siotuvali Market, Kamutinye, Kitoto, Unyeo, Ngomano, and Siongungi in Kadhumbi Location Ward, and Kisuyani, Miangeni, Kaseve, Katithi, Mikizi, and Madangadhi in Mavindini Ward. That the committee recommended corrective measures to the contractor, but the matter has not been addressed by the relevant contractor and other agencies. That the petitioner therefore prays that the Senate intervenes to ensure that the contractor safeguards the residents living in the affected areas and from devastating effects of the construction of the dam, not limited to the noise from the rock blasting. Senator Mbito, then I will. Now come and give your petition. Then we'll give comments together. I have finished mine. Okay, yeah.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I wish to present a petition to the Senate concerning the psychological torture that pensioners of the Kenya Railway Staff Retirement Benefit Scheme have been subjected over the years, and the looming collapse of the scheme due to mismanagement and illegal practices against regulation. With the undersigned, citizens of the Republic of Kenya and residents of Nairobi County, representing more than 10,000 pensioners across the country, draw the attention of the Senate to the following. 1. Kenya Railway Staff Retirement Benefit Scheme was set up through a trust deed signed on 3rd of May 2016 to provide pension and other retirement benefits to employees of Kenya Railways Corporation. That the trustees were to hold the contributions paid to them by the sponsor, that is Kenya Railways Corporation, and pay members in accordance with the provisions of its trust deed and rules. That the scheme currently holds about 99% of its total assets in immovable property, that is land and buildings, as per the legal notice number 169 of 2006, transferred to it by the sponsor. That the Retirement Benefits Authority, a regulating body, allows a maximum investment of 30% of the scheme's fund in immovable property, which signifies that the scheme is not in compliance with the stipulated regulation. Secondly, on governance issues in the management of the scheme's affairs, at the inception, it was envisaged that the scheme would have challenges in liquidity and compliance with RBA requirements of 30-70% ratio due to the transferred assets being 100%. That in realization of this challenge, the sponsor appointed a carefully selected team of experts to form the Board of Trustees to be able to address this issue. That the Board of Trustees drafted a well-designed integrated strategic plan, which gave a clear roadmap on how the scheme would grow and comply with RBA regulations within determined timelines. That due to designs of greed and desire to profit from prime land transferred to the scheme, the Board of Trustees were unceremoniously disbanded, having resisted to be enjoined in the Gold City project propagated by the sponsor, which finally collapsed. Thirdly, irregular and unconstitutional practices, including corruption and abuse of office, that after disbanding of the Board of Trustees that was instituted earlier, another one was put in place, which unfortunately consisted of people who systematically stripped the scheme's assets through unscrupulous sale of assets, some through private treaties at exceedingly low market rates. That RBA, on its regulatory mandate, dissolved the Board of Trustees after members of the scheme sought its intervention. That RBA subsequently appointed an inspection team which gave their findings on 14th of November 2011, which stated in part, and I quote, "The scheme was fraught with corruption, breach of trust, abuse of office, fraudulent disposal of assets, and other malpractices," end of quote. This led to the disbandment of the Board of Trustees. That the sponsor seemed to take advantage of the opportunity and began to appoint corporate trustees rather than have members being represented through the Board of Trustees. For 7 years, Alexander Forbes Financial Services Limited, now called Zamara, and who were until then providing actuarial services to the scheme, brought down this scheme to its knees, leaving it high and dry. That the members have made the best of efforts to have these matters addressed by relevant authorities, all of which have failed to give satisfactory response. That none of these issues raised in these petitions is pending in any court of law, constitutional, or any other body. Therefore, your humble petitioners pray to the Senate that, one, that it intervenes to ensure that the directive of the court issued on 11th of April 2013 are implemented. Two, that it intervenes and help the vulnerable pensioners who have not received their pensions for the last 12 months and are now experiencing both financial and psychological torture, especially with the current pandemic situation. And three, any other recommendations that the Senate may seem necessary on this matter. Signed this day, 14th day of June 2020, and it is signed by Mr. Washika, Mr. Jakaiti, Mr. Boynet, Mr. Simiu, Mr. Luka, Mr. Maina, and Mr. Ocheng. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, honorable senators, pursuant to Standing Order 231, I shall now allow comments, observation, or clarification in relation to the petitions for not more than 30 minutes. Senator Khaneri, what's your intervention?
Mr. Speaker, I rise on a point of order to seek your direction. Mr. Speaker, the biggest thing that Kenyans are waiting from this House today is to see if we'll agree on the formula for sharing of revenue. Mr. Speaker, counties and the entire country is anxiously waiting for the outcome of this debate. I have gone through the order paper, Mr. Speaker, and as I came from my house, I was very sure that that was the business we were coming to discuss. Not to say that the other business are not important, but this is what Kenyans are waiting for at the moment. I have looked through the order paper, Mr. Speaker. I don't see that item, unless there is a supplementary order paper coming later on. I thought this was the most important business that is awaiting this House to determine. Mr. Speaker, I am seeking your direction on this matter. I'm not challenging the work of the House Business Committee. I know we have a very competent House Business Committee, but we expected as members that this will be the first and foremost business of this House today. Mr. Speaker, we are seeking your direction.
Thank you very much. I'm aware that this is a matter that the entire country is waiting for our direction. The matter was discussed in the House Business Committee. There was a small committee that was consulting so that a lot of consensus is built as much as possible. We had given them up to about 1:30 today to finalize, but unfortunately there are still areas that need to be finalized, and therefore the direction, and I know the leader of majority will be seeking to move a motion to adjust our calendar so that the matter is concluded on Thursday. Thursday at 2:30. Okay, Senator, it's better, that's the direction I've given. It's better we take a bit of time and agree than rush it and then we don't get a neat process. So it's guided. Locorio, Petronila on the petitions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to contribute to the motion by Senator Githiomi on the settlement of IDPs, especially those that are in camps. Mr. Speaker, there's a lot of noise behind me.
Let's consult in low tones. Let's consult in low tones, not noise. Okay, proceed, Senator Petronila.
Okay, thank you, Speaker. I would like to contribute to the motion by Senator Githiomi and thank him to the petition by Senator Mudhiomi and thank him for bringing it to the House. Mr. Speaker, these IDPs have been there, some as far as 1997, 92, and not just the ones for 2007, 2008 electoral violence. Mr. Speaker, I would like also that we include, as we talk about resettlement of these IDPs, we include the IDPs that were reintegrated back into their homes or into their families, even during that time. Most of the reintegrated IDPs come from the Western and the Nyanza region, who have been neglected for so long in the resettlement of IDPs. So even as we look at that petition and the solutions to the resettlement of these IDPs, we consider the ones from Nyanza and Western who have never received any form of compensation, although they suffered a lot of loss during that electoral violence of 2007-2008. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Halaka Abshiro.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the petition by Senator Githiomi regarding the IDPs. Mr. Speaker, we are seeing a really disturbing trend where the human rights, the rights of our citizens are actually being violated by the people or by the government that actually is supposed to be protecting and ensuring that there's respect and protection of the citizens. Mr. Speaker, while we know that this happened many years ago, it's now about 20 years, I think, or 18 to 19 years. How long does it take for these very simple, or numbers of people that are not even that many? And we're being told in Western Kenya, people are still not settled. IDPs all the way from 2007, 2008 are still on streets. Mr. Speaker, I think it's a shame for us as this House to preside over these kinds of violations of the rights of our citizens when we are just sitting here. Mr. Speaker, Article 43 of the Constitution clearly stipulates, and this country is also signatory to a lot of international laws and humanitarian norms. Mr. Speaker, I don't know at what point the humanitarian laws, the Constitution of Kenya will be upheld by the same people that are supposed to be protecting, the same people that are supposed to be not violating these things. So, Mr. Speaker, I think this is something that I know Senator Githiomi's committee, which I used to serve on, takes these things very seriously and make sure that we see to it that these violations are corrected. IDPs are all over this country, Mr. Speaker. There are those that are political IDPs, but there's also humanitarian IDPs in this country. In where we come from, every time there's a flood, every time there are locusts, every time there's insecurity, there are IDPs, left, right, and center, even in our county of Isiolo. So, Mr. Speaker, we need to look at the whole issue of displacements of population, because it has a bearing on the services that we provide, it has a bearing on security, it has a bearing on health indicators, Mr. Speaker. So we need to look at IDPs, both political and non-political, and in all parts of this country, and ensure that those violations are remedied and that the people that are supposed to be protecting them do the right thing. I support and I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Wetangula Moses.
This history of IDPs in this country is an eyesore. Mr. Speaker, we have had IDPs ranging from the...
Let's consult in low tones. Order members. Let's consult in low tones, please.
Mr. Speaker, ranging from the 1992-93 politically instigated violence against citizens, 97, 207, and other times. In the process, Mr. Speaker, people have been violently uprooted from their properties and sent away to places that they have no affinity with. They became internally displaced persons. Mr. Speaker, in the last parliament, this House dealt with issues of IDPs almost every session. And information came to the floor, Mr. Speaker, that at the time the government had spent over 25 billion Kenya shillings to settle IDPs. It turned out in some of the inquiries we had, Mr. Speaker, that the money was actually shared between public servants, largely, leaving genuine IDPs from being settled. I believe this statement, this petition will end up in the committee chaired by the president of the petition himself, the distinguished Senator for Nyandarua, who is the chair of lands, because they're the ones dealing with settlement. Mr. Speaker, in doing so, they must also bring to this House the pertinent issues raised in the petition, where the petitioners are saying they lost their dignity, livelihoods, homes, and properties. To whom did they lose these properties?
What's your point of order, Senator Ephraim Maina?
Mr. Speaker, I am not intending to disrupt my friend, but he has made a statement here which should not just go unnoticed, that the money that was supposed to actually settle some of the people who are suffering, and we know of a figure of about 25 billion, was shared somehow among civil servants. And I find this, Mr. Speaker, if there is a slightest speck of truth, Mr. Speaker, I think we should actually, in this committee is doing whatever they are doing, be demanding action on that, on those people, because truly people are suffering, and we cannot have, if money was shared among civil servants. I remember my friend who was in the government, he may have better information, and he could help at this time to bring these people to book.
Mr. Speaker, my colleagues like Mutula Kilonzo can tell you that we have records of this House that showed that the bulk of the money was misappropriated. And the managers of that money were public servants, not private citizens. The records are there, Mr. Speaker. And the question I'm raising in relation to this petition, Mr. Speaker, is where there were political conflicts, like in parts of Rift Valley, people fled from their properties. Eventually, peace came back to the areas. Why hasn't the government enabled people to go back to their properties? Because your house may have been burned. The land can't have been burned. The land is there. Why hasn't the government helped people to go back to their properties? Or why hasn't the government appropriated that land to those who want to live in those hostile areas, to those who fled, and help them acquire land elsewhere so that they can be settled? Number two, Mr. Speaker, where you and I come from, and Senator Petronil has raised it, because of our cultural practices, people don't accept to go and live in polythene papers on markets as IDPs. They get integrated into homes of relatives. These are people who are still suffering, living in dignity. And the most shocking thing in the reports we have in this House, Mr. Speaker, and again, Senator Mutula Kilonzo is the one who brought the issue here when we were in the last parliament, when they were compensating IDPs, in some areas the government was paying IDPs 400,000 per family. In areas like Western and Nyanza, they were paying each family 10,000. Why this disparity? This House, Mr. Speaker, as the defender and protector of counties, their people and their governments, must bring this matter to a final end by getting the government to settle each and every person that lost their properties because of the misbehavior of politicians, to which the government must take responsibility, because the ultimate protection of every citizen and their property lies with government. And when the government fails to protect people, it must take responsibility, it must compensate people, it must settle people. And this is not a matter that we can compromise on. So I urge the committee, Mr. Speaker, not to limit themselves to the Nyandarua situation, but to look at the records available in this parliament and look elsewhere and see that we bring this matter to a finality once and for all. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Cherargei.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Then Senator Mwaruma can start leaving the other chamber. Okay, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Two issues, one on the petition of the IDPs. I want to say this issue has become a biggest problem in this country. I thought these are the matters that we have resolved as a government. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, I want to challenge the chair because Senator Wetangula has raised this issue, that you need also to look at the forest evictees and people who are displaced by agencies, not even through political, but other agencies that have what we call forest evictees. For example, Mr. Speaker, in areas of Serengonik and many other areas, there are many forest evictees, and Mr. Speaker, it has brought to my attention that today the court in Nakuru has ruled that forest evictions from Mau must be stopped forthwith by the Kenya Forest Service and also by the Ministry of Environment. Mr. Speaker, even as we discuss about the IDPs caused by political violence, we must look also at the forest evictees. Number two, Speaker, on the issue of landslide, because there was a petition that was brought 2 weeks ago, the issue of landslide also has become a problem. As somebody has said, when floods or rock acid invest, we must look at that issue because the same people are also displaced. The floods that we saw in Nyando, in Nandi, a place called Cherondo, in Tindre sub-county, there are always landslides. Let's consult in
order members. Let's consult in low tones. Observe social distancing. Okay, proceed. Yeah.
Thank you, Speaker. The issue I was raising is that we also have evictions that are caused by natural disasters, like the floods that we saw in Nyando, in Kisumu sub-county, we saw in Cherondo, in Tindre sub-county. There are many areas across the country that have been evicted by the disasters, that the natural disasters have happened. So, Mr. Speaker, as we look at the issue of evictees that were caused because of political violence, we must also, Mr. Speaker, look at the people that have been displaced because of natural disasters, because of forest evictees, that even in Molo the other day in Nakuru County, people were being infected even here in Kariobangi and many other areas across the country. Mr. Speaker, I want to challenge the Chair of Land, Senator Gidiomi, to seize this matter and not narrow it down to only Nyandarua, but also include other counties and those three subsets of evictees that I've said. Finally, Mr. Speaker, on the issue of Twagetam, I want to say, Mr. Speaker, that the issue of, it's so sad that even as we fight, you know, the other feature, by one of the leading citizen TV the other day. They were running a feature called "We Can't Breathe," where an industry here in Nairobi was being accused of releasing and not regulating their emissions to the environment, Mr. Speaker. And that was saying we can't breathe. So we want also, even as the people of Tuake area celebrate that they now have a dam to ensure the issues of loss of water, Mr. Speaker, we must look at the issue of pollution so that their health remains. Mr. Speaker, I think it is the right time that we need to call out the National Environment and Management Authority. NEMA has been sleeping on the job. There are so many cases across the country. From the one here in Nairobi about the other day in Machakos County, where they are releasing fumes and emission at night, but during the day they give it out and it was run well by media. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, you can see Tuake, there are so many constructions happening across the country. But we want to call upon the NEMA, although we are aware NEMA, Mr. Speaker, do not have a substantive CEO at the moment. But even as they look for substantive CEO, the accountability of NEMA as provided by the law, they must be careful to ensure that they protect our people from pollution, Mr. Speaker. Even as we fight many other issues in this country, we want to tell NEMA that they must play their role. The people of Tuake cannot continue to suffer simply because they are benefiting from it. Because, Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, even if this Tuake dam comes into operation, yet the people have died. What will be the benefit to them, Mr. Speaker? So we need to agree that the issue of Tuake dam and the issue of NEMA must seize the opportunity and ensure that the people within that area don't continue to suffer. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Okay, Senator Maruma, keep them brief. Then Senator Mutula Kilonzo.
Nashukuru Mheshimiwa Spika kwa hii nafasi ulionipa ili kuchangia hili ombi lililoletwa na Mheshimiwa mwenyekiti wa kamati ya mashamba, Mheshimiwa Paul Mwangi Githiomi. Ni kweli Mheshimiwa Spika, ni jukumu la serikali kupeana kila mtu shamba. Ni haki ya wananchi kuishi katika hali ya kuheshimika. Mheshimiwa Spika, kuna IDPs wengi mahali kwingi, watu wanaoishi katika hali ya uchochole wakiwa hawana mashamba. Najua hili ombi litaenda kwa kamati yangu ya mashamba na nafikiri tutalivalia njuga hili swala ili tuangalie katika sehemu tofauti tofauti za Kenya wananchi ambao hawana mashamba na tusukume serikali iwape mashamba. Mheshimiwa Spika, tulienda hadi Laikipia wakati mwingine na kamati ya mashamba kuangalia wananchi waliotupwa kutoka msitu wa Marmanet na wakatupwa barabarani, wanaishi katika hali mbaya sana. Hali tuliyoiona pale, Mheshimiwa Spika, ilikuwa ni ya kuhuzunisha ajabu. Ajabu ni kwamba mpaka sasa wale watu bado wanaishi katika ile hali. Hawajapewa mashamba. Na kuna mashamba mengi Kenya, Mheshimiwa Spika. Hii inaitwa government land. Ni jukumu la serikali lifunge buti na Wizara ya Mashamba na National Land Commission ipatie hawa wananchi mashamba yao. La pili, Mheshimiwa Spika, nikimalizia, nataka kuongea kuhusu hali ya uharaka wa kuangalia mambo ya maombi ama petitions. Kule sehemu ya Taita Taveta kuna wananchi wanaoishi area ya Mwaktau ambao walileta ombi kwa hii nyumba ya kwamba serikali ya Kenya ilipatia title deed kwa ranch na wananchi zaidi ya 10,000 saizi wanafukuzwa kutoka kwa hiyo ranch kwa sababu title deed ilipewa ranch mwaka wa 85 na hawa wananchi walianza kuishi 1919 wakati wa vita vya pili vya dunia, vita vya kwanza vya dunia. Walipigana huko na wakafanya makazi hapo. Hii petition bado haijamaliziwa na koti imepeana mpaka mwezi wa 10 hao watu watolewe kwa hiyo ardhi. Naomba wakati tunaangalia haya maombi mengine, na chairman wangu wako hapa, tuangalie zile petitions zingine pia ambazo hazijaangaliwa ili wananchi wetu wa Kenya wapate kuishi katika hali ya amani. Singependa kusema zaidi ya hapo, Mheshimiwa Spika, lakini kushukuru Kenya na Wakenya kwa sababu ya ile confidence walio nayo ama ile imani wako nayo na hii nyumba ya Senate kwamba matatizo yao wakiyaleta hapa basi yanaangaliwa kwa haraka. Asante Mheshimiwa Spika.
Senator Mtula Kilonzo Jr.
Thank you, Speaker. I'll begin with the petition by Senator Mbito. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that I'm glad the chairperson of Labour, Senator Johnston Sakaja, is back with us. Mr. Speaker, the question of pensions does not affect Kenya Railways alone. It affects Kenya Post and Telecommunication. To our surprise, it also affects the workers who used to work for the East Africa Corporation. Mr. Speaker, I would urge the committee, in fact, to consider a general motion on all pensioners in the country, because pensioners of all state corporations are suffering and for plunder by their trustees. Teleposta Pension Scheme bought phantom properties. Kenya local authorities bought phantom properties. Their trustees are billionaires. The pensioners are paupers. These are criminals wearing suits, and we should punish them. Mr. Speaker, I urge that we take not just Kenya Railways, but we take all of them. And RBA, the reason why RBA was set up was to prevent such issues. Somebody works for 60 years, and after working for government or a parastatal for 60 years and getting their deductions, they become paupers. The same thing happens to members of parliament. I have proposed that members of parliament should not go to treasury for their pension. We should not beg when our money has been deducted. We should manage our pension. So the pension regime, Mr. Speaker, ought to be regulated. The petition by Senator Mwangi Githomi. Mr. Speaker, I have a statement I raised here. And that statement was given to me by people who are managing IDPs. This is the reason why IDPs have not been settled, have not been paid. There is a committee that is supposed to be set up under the Act. That committee has never been set up for the last 4 years. It's deliberate. And therefore, there is nobody to enforce the Act. And Senator Wetangula is right, that we were brought a list here by a chair. And that list showed the discrimination that is this country. Somebody evicted from one area is paid more than the other one. It's a shame. But the records are here. And I hope that we can resolve this matter as quickly as possible. The third one, on the residents of Makueni. Mr. Speaker, this matter was brought by the Chinese when they were doing the standard gauge railway. And I was telling Senator Duro recently when she called me about these NEMA people. I said these NEMA people are the most incompetent organization in the country. I saw the minister walking around the river, somewhere here at Ngara. That is the work of NEMA. The river where Senator Sakaja knows, where we all grew up, is full of sewer in the city of Nairobi. NEMA is asleep. Mr. Speaker, there are no regulation on blasting. While NEMA has regulations on making noise, on decibels, there are no regulations in the country on blasts. And Mr. Speaker, in the case of Makueni, while people were being compensated in a 300-meter corridor, these blasts were destroying homes a kilometer from the blast. But since they don't fall within the corridor, Mr. Speaker, they were not compensated. I know people whose fish bones cracked, whose houses cracked. There's even a case of environment where the blasting created so much dust. The Chinese are operating in Kenya as if they are the law themselves. And the committee, I hope, Senator Mwangi Githomi, you're going to use your usual fiery stand on people like this, because we need regulations. People are suffering. When you see a whole county assembly filing a petition like this one, it means the county commissioner of Makueni has been unable to deal with it. The governor of Makueni has been unable to deal with it, and it's only you now, like you did when we went for the Kibwezi Kitui Road and Manoni Dam, where you got order from national government officials. This is one of those instances. You not only save the people of Makueni, but the people of Narok, because the people whose houses were destroyed during the SGR construction, and it must be happening along the railway line wherever they are going, have never been compensated. We cannot allow this. Thank you, Chair.
Senator Ephraim Maina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I like to support the two petitions, and I'll start with the Senator Mwangi Githiomi's petition. Mr. Speaker, the matter being raised by Mr. Mwangi Githiomi cuts across almost everywhere in the country. It's not just in Nyandarua. But, Mr. Speaker, we have a country, we have a government that failed to protect people. For example, during the clashes, 1992, the clashes, 2007, and the people were displaced from their duly owned land, Mr. Speaker. And these people went and camped on the roadside, camped everywhere, actually going back to what was supposed to be their original place, Mr. Speaker. This matter was a matter that the government should have handled, and since it was not handled to conclusiveness, it should be handled today. Mr. Speaker, in this region here, let me say in Central Province, there are many families who are rendered destitute, who are rendered into poverty through this process. And there was resources given, as Senator Watagula has brought up, and it is actually mind-boggling. Why, Mr. Speaker? People should have been suffering. Even the criminals who misappropriated the money, nothing has ever been done. Mr. Speaker, we cannot run Kenya like this. Mr. Speaker, regarding even my own home area, I can tell you, people who are displaced, chased away from the forest, who used to be under the Chaba system, they are living on the roadside in some areas, like in an area called Teto, Kiadogoro. They are still living there, years after years after years, Mr. Speaker. The government, in whatever else is doing, there is no development that is greater than enabling a human being to live a decent life and actually be able to actually survive without any aid. But further, a government should feel extremely guilty where by acts of omission or whatever action, they make human beings become destitute, human beings who own the land. And Mr. Speaker, when this commission is going around, I would like them to look at one thing about IDP specifically. The IDPs own the properties in some areas, Mr. Speaker. And if we have a country by the rule of law which protects the sanctity of the title, for example, truly, either these properties are sold and the people the original owners are compensated, or, Mr. Speaker, if we are seriously having a peaceful situation, let them be enabled to go back into those areas, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we cannot be double speaking. We are here for the livelihood of the people. Forget anything else we are doing. Development are not big planes flying around. Development are not tarmac roads going around. Development is when the ordinary person can be able to feed his family, when the ordinary person is living a decent life, the ordinary person can go to a hospital, get medicine. Mr. Speaker, I want to say this matter is so central and is so deep into the issues of democracy and the issues of justice that I want this committee to reconsider. Even if they need to enlarge the committee, but have actually come up with a report that would be conclusive and demanding from the government immediate action Let it not just become another report, which you gather dust somewhere, Mr. Speaker. The people in Nyandarua, I sympathize with them. The people of Laikipia, I sympathize with them. The people in Western Kenya, I sympathize with them. The people in Nyanza, I sympathize with them, who are all displaced during the so-called clashes, which were investigated by us leaders. No ordinary person can go instigating some of this violence. It is instigated by us leaders, Mr. Speaker. And the worst thing that we did was to ignore and forget those people to live in misery. Some of them have died, Mr. Speaker. And I want to say that I hope when the report comes, it should be acted upon, Mr. Speaker. And if there is anybody who has misappropriated resources that was supposed to settle the people.
What's your point of order, Senator Khaniri?
Mr. Speaker, I have tremendous respect for the senator on the floor, the senator from Kirinyaga. But, Mr. Speaker, this House is guided
Senator
by...
from Nyeri.
From Nyeri, sorry.
Yep.
From Nyeri, sorry. Senator from Nyeri, Senator Ephraim Maina. We have our standing orders that guide debate in this House. This is a petition. It's not a motion. It's not a bill. Mr. Speaker, standing order number 231, it's very clear on comments on petition that such comments will not exceed 30 minutes. So if there's one senator will take 20 minutes speaking, then what will happen to the other senators, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, this has to be controlled.
Okay, but
Okay.
Mr. Kaniri, I've not spoken.
Senator Khaniri.
Oh, Senator Kaniri, I've not spoken in the many words you keep throwing into this House. I've only spoken a pitiful of the words you speak. And I'm not a man of many words. And I'm coming to the end, Mr. Speaker.
Conclude.
Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, and I'm not concluding because I was rudely disrupted. No. I'm concluding because I recognize there are some of us who are slower and we need to carry them along with us, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want to conclude by saying, let us be sympathetic, let us look at the lives of the people who have been displaced, including the people, some of them who may be from Senator Kaniri's place, and justice be done. Thank you.
Honorable Senators, we are running out of time on petitions, so I'll only allow Dr. Zani. Then we go to other statements. Dr. Zani. Okay, take the shortest time possible so that I can see there's a lot of interest, but we must move. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think a lot already has been said, and quite a bit of it is going to be repetition. Some time back, I had a chance to talk about statelessness in one of the forums that I went to. This is not about statelessness, but it is about displacement, which is just as bad. Because when you don't have a sense of identity, when you don't feel you belong, when inequality is very, very high, when you cannot contribute functionally as a person to a country, then it is a problem. It's really sad that for this particular country, Nyandarua, it's come to the fore. But, Mr. Speaker, I'm sure many other counties have the same situation. I plead that as this committee interrogates this issue, that they probably try to address this on a broad scale so that they can identify and have this situation sorted once and for all. Mr. Speaker, I think it has gone on for far too long, and Senator Githiomi, we are happy that you've been able to bring it to the table. The committee really needs to do a good job so that they can establish for us a sense of being, a sense of integrity, a sense of self-esteem that every Kenyan is actually meant to have in this country. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Kabaka, 2 minutes, and Senator Ochilo Ayako, what is your point of order from wherever you are? Start coming. Senator Kabaka. Kabaka.
My brother, it is me.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity also to contribute to this important statement. But, petition, slip of tongue, by my friend, Senator for Nyandarua, Senator Gidiomi, very experienced senator, having served both in the National Assembly and the Senate for some time. Mr. Speaker, I don't want to repeat what has been said. That would be tautological. I only need to state that, yes, I need to say that this issue of refugees in their own states or in their own country is very touchy. And it's no different from the international refugees. Like we've had refugees suffering even in their own camps. But of necessity, the issue which I need to state is that, Mr. Speaker, is the issue of this land. That issue which has been pinpointed by several senators before, who spoke before me. And I think it's high time that the other agencies of the government be involved to investigate who took what or who took which land. Money is not everything here. Some people might have been compensated in monetary terms, but others are sentimentally attached to their land, because that is the land they know, which they were born, perhaps. The second issue touches on the Kenya Railways pensioners, retirement benefit pensioners scheme. It is very emotive. I'm saying so, for those who don't know, I've worked in railway for 9 years. And it's a very big letdown to the pioneers of Kenya Railways, East African Railways, then Kenya Railways. They worked hard for these parastatal, these institutions, and even other related parastatals like the defunct KPLC, Kenya Post and Telecommunication, which demerged to 3 agencies. So what I'm saying here is that the mismanagement of these funds, which enormously totals to billions of Kenyan shillings, is very sad. And I think there is collusion between those in management, the actuarial bodies which run today affairs of the scheme. And Mr. Speaker, therefore, as I conclude, for other senators to speak, I am saying that the head must roll. The corruptions in this country is too much, and therefore it's important even people should revisit their moral concerns. I support Mr. Speaker, sir.
Senator Ochila Yakot, your point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my point of order is that we are very lonely in the other chambers. We've been trying to catch your attention, and seemingly all the members here are the ones visible, except only Senator Maruma. So my point of order is, you had indicated that I come from wherever I am, so I've come from wherever I am so that you are able to recognize me.
Can you then make your contribution? 2 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, thank you for giving me an opportunity and to recognize that there is another chamber nearby. Mr. Speaker, there are 2 petitions here, one regarding pensions and another regarding internally displaced persons. Mr. Speaker, there are many factors that cause internal displacement of people, but the one that is sensitive and the one that most people speak to is one that is caused by politicians. There are factors that do this, economic factors, operations of the law, disaster, but we never try and settle our people who are displaced because of economic factors or factors that are disaster. In the county where I come from, Migori County, we have incessant flooding. We have the lake, reclaiming land, and many people are displaced year in, year out. The response we get from government time and again is that these people should move to high grounds. Mr. Speaker, I want to beg the committee to which this petition is being taken to also consider discussing internal displacement of persons caused by factors other than political disagreements or violence. Now, Mr. Speaker, regarding pension, the elephant in the room is pension in counties, particularly pensions that relate to former local authorities. And Mr. Speaker, when you look at all these counties, you will find out that there is no pension that is being prepared for retirees. If you look at counties, particularly the ones that have sugar milling plants that are state-owned, Mumias, Sony, Chemelil, the employees have not been paid for 1 year. I doubt whether their pension is being looked into and whether they are likely to get their pension when they retire. I want to request the committee to which this petition is being taken to ensure that they look at all the pensions in light of the fact that COVID. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, Senator Musuruve, 2 minutes. And honorable senators, let us observe social distancing. I notice that we are slowly getting back into our normal operations. Please, COVID is real. Yes, Senator Musuruve.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to make my contributions. And Honorable Speaker, I want to really support the two senators, Senator Githiomi and Senator Mbito, for their petitions, because these are petitions that are revolving around people. And when you look at our motto, Honorable Speaker, the Senate motto revolves around the society and people, and that actually tells that we must represent people effectively. Honorable Speaker, concerning the petition of Senator Githiomi, in fact, when you are branded an IDP, that already sets a negative thought about someone. There is need, Honorable Speaker, for us to ensure that IDPs are given placement, and even when it comes to compensation, Honorable Speaker, the compensation of IDPs should be standard across the board, Honorable Speaker. There should not be that there are some IDPs who are getting less than others because they are all affected, and it's a painful thorn to all of the flesh, a painful thorn in the flesh of all IDPs, regardless of where they come from. Honorable Speaker, concerning the petition of Senator Mbito, it is a very viable petition, Honorable Speaker. These people, these members of staff who have already retired, they worked for Kenya Railways when they were energetic, they gave all their lives, and eventually their pension has been, swindled by people. Honorable Speaker, it is really painful that during your youthful years, you are doing a lot of work, you are giving your best, and when you're giving your best, you're hoping that your retirement will be okay. But it is unfortunate that somebody cunning is hoping that you'll give your best so that he benefits from your sweat. Honorable Speaker, there is need for this petition to be taken to a conclusion, because in 2013, this petition also was addressed by the court, but whatever verdict that the court gave was not honored. Honorable Speaker, justice should not be delayed. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Senator Fatuma Dulo, keep it short, senators.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll be very short. Number one, I wanted to contribute to the pension. Mr. Speaker, as my colleagues have said, the former local authority members of staff, they are really discriminated. The trustees are taking the huge chunk of their savings from them. I think that matter really quickly needs to be resolved, and I hope the committee will look into that. Number two, issues of IDPs. There was a lot of disparity in terms of how the budget was allocated or the money was allocated. And a very good example is my own county, where people living in Kenya from post-election violence, up to now they have not been compensated. Finally, Mr. Speaker, issues of land is emotive. It's not only the IDP of 2007 post-election violence. There are so many Kenyans who are actually displaced. Kenyans themselves who are living in their own land today, they are being dispossessed because of the manner in which Ministry of Land is actually handling the land issues. A very good example is Yolo County, where we had a petition and a statement before the lands committee. This matter has not been resolved up to now. Today in my own county, the county government is giving letters of allotment without actually subjecting the list of the beneficiaries to the communities to look at it and see whether they are affected or not. I think matters of land needs to be handled with a lot of seriousness that it deserves in this country. I thank you.
Senator Ledama. 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, I'll be very brief. I rise to support the three petitions, and I'd like to request the committee that will be tasked with petition number 3, that has to do with the blasting of dams, to extend their work to the blasting of, or the source of materials for the construction of the SGR railway. Mr. Speaker, sir, there are so many people who were admitted in hospitals. They paid serious bills. Some of them have permanent damages to their health. When the SGR was being constructed, particularly in Narok County, in a place called Sia Bay, where children, an orphanage, where children live there in the mercy of other people, yet they were allowed to continue blasting and getting the material. Mr. Speaker, sir, the issue of NEMA. NEMA is devolved, you know, and I think county governments are now failing in ensuring that NEMA carries out their function. And it behooves us as members of this House who represent counties to ensure that we push NEMA to guarantee a good environment for our citizens. Number 2, Mr. Speaker, sir, on this issue of IDPs. I'm a firm believer that before someone becomes an IDP, they have a home. So the government ought to ensure that those people who were evicted from their homes, their original homes, due to the issue of political instability in the country, are facilitated to be able to be returned back to their home. And finally, Mr. Speaker, on this issue of pension, it is evil for people to spend money, which is money that has been contributed by civil servants, by Kenyans, people who are working. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, because I see the time is up, I'd like to propose that the committee comes up with serious recommendations for setting up
Your time is up.
various civil and criminal.
Your time is up, Senator Ladama. What's your point of intervention, Senator?
Mr. Speaker, although the Honorable Senator has left the floor, but it will be wrong for it to be on record because he stated that NEMA is devolved. It is not. If you look at 4th schedule, NEMA and the protection of environment is under the national government, and it's item number 22. So it better. They only have field offices, but it's not devolved. It will be wrong for it to be on record that NEMA is devolved.
It's true. That's the position. You can read it later, Senator Ledama. We don't have a lot of time. You are off. You are off the mic. Are you reading a different document?
We have engaged NEMA, and NEMA themselves have devolved their services. Okay? So if
they have decentralized, Senator Ledama. Finally, Senator Wambua.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you for this opportunity to comment on this statement. The petitions, I will be very brief, but I must inform my friend, Senator Fonaro, that there's a difference between centralization and devolution.
Consult in Lawton's, Honorable Senator.
Mr. Speaker, on the matter of the petition that you read from residents of Makueni, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that this is a very unfortunate situation. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, because the reason why people in this country petition this House is because they expect that their matters will be processed and they will get results. It's the same reason why members here bring statements to the floor. Mr. Speaker, the matter of pollution arising from blasting in construction sites across this country has been a thorn in the flesh of communities neighboring capital projects. In Kitui, along the Kibwezi-Kitui Road, there have been several cases which have been brought to the floor of this House, Mr. Speaker, given to the Committee on Roads and Transportation, where I sit, the Speaker, to date, those people are awaiting results. The Speaker, I was going to be standing to comment on this matter and say, going forward, Mr. Speaker, I will urge the Chair, the Speaker of the Senate, to ensure that the Speaker directions that are given on statements, on petitions, on motions, the Speaker, they are implemented to the letter, because this is the only way that we are going to heighten public confidence in the Senate, so that we are not just seen as a talking house. We are a house of record. We are a serious house, Mr. Speaker, for legislation and representation. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Bomet, what is your... You know, not everybody can... we have really overshot our time. I'll give you an opportunity during statements which are just coming. Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order 2321, the petition should be committed to the relevant standing committee for its consideration. In this case, I direct that the petition be committed to the Standing Committee on Land, Environment, and Natural Resources. So in terms of Standing Order 2322, the committee is required in not more than 60 calendar days from the time of reading the prayer to respond to the petitioner by way of a report addressed to the petitioner and laid on the table of the Senate. On the petition on railway staff, Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order 2321, the petition should be committed to the relevant standing committee for its consideration. In this case, I direct that the petition be committed to the Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare. In terms of Standing Order 232, the committee is required in not more than 60 calendar days from the time of reading the prayer to respond to the petitioner by way of a report addressed to the petitioner and laid on the table of the Senate. I thank you. And finally,
students and teachers, if not everyone, should schools reopen? What health and safety measures should schools adopt on reopening? Indeed, one of the most critical questions is whether reopening schools will lead to a resurgence of infection among learners, staff, and product community. Mr. Speaker, sir, research evidence indicates that the timing of school reopening should be guided by the best interest of the child and overall public health considerations based on an assessment of the associated benefits and risk and informed by cross-sectoral and context-specific data, including education, public health, and socioeconomic factors. Prior to the opening of the schools, the government are expected to come up with critical policies, procedures, and financing plans needed to improve schooling, with a focus on safe operations, including strengthening remote learning practices. Mr. Speaker, sir, the governments are expected to develop clear and easy to understand and detailed protocols on physical distancing and hygiene measures and policies to protect teaching and non-teaching staff and learners, in addition to identifying response and recovery financing for immediate investments in school water, sanitation, and hygiene. Mr. Speaker, sir, as part of reopening process, governments are expected to adopt proactive approaches to reintegrate marginalized and out-of-school children and focus on remedial education to compensate for the lost instructional time. They should also provide clear guidance to establish procedures to be followed if learners or staff members become unwell, and equip teachers with skills and knowledge to be able to deal with students' mental health and psychosocial needs, address stigmatization and discrimination, and support learners and their families in coping with the continued uncertainties of the pandemic. Mr. Speaker, we are greatly convinced that a return to face-to-face instruction would enhance life chances of our children and reverse any devastating impacts of the recent months. Across the world, learners are going back...
You'll need to summarize, Senator.
Yes, okay. Across the world, the learners are going back to learning institutions that have reopened using a wide range of schools. Mr. Speaker, weighing on the health risk posed by the coronavirus against educational risk, The Education Committee recommends the following. First, reopening of basic education learning institutions may be beginning from September 2020 to allow a division of classes into smaller groups and allowing each group its own specific room where learners only interact with classmates in their assigned group. Priority should be given to the national examination classes, KCPE and KCSE, so that they can continue with syllabus coverage and prepare for examination. The first lessons for students following reopening should cover similar topics, including epidemic prevention, healthcare maintenance, and how to respond to emergency drills. Prohibition of usual morning meetings and parades, cancellation of all sporting activities and field trips, as well as to be able to adhere to social distance. Frequent cleaning and hand washing practices should, in this case, be observed, and this should be conducted twice a day. All members of staff and learners should always wear a cloth face mask. Desks and other workstations should be spaced at 6 feet each to minimize, and also minimize time spent inside closed door rooms. The Ministry of Education should outline and circulate standard opening procedures for dealing with potential exposure to coronavirus and ensure that learning institutions are able to manage identified infections or symptoms within the school by providing isolation rooms. The Ministry of Education should mobilize the support and assistance from different government departments and agencies, including the Kenya Defense Forces and National Youth Service, to provide sanitation and water in schools. The Ministry of Education should ensure that there are adequate hand washing facilities, basins, running water, and soap in appropriate stations within the school. Ministry of Education should liaise with the Ministry of Health to ensure that all learning institutions access public health personnel as well as expertise to be able to help while school is going on. Ministry of Education should also provide regular and strict internal as well as external monitoring and evaluation that should be reported in as a bi-weekly report to Parliament, to teacher unions, and to National Parents Association. Ministry of Education should provide sufficient resources to resuscitate the digital literacy programs to ensure that all learners have access to updated digital materials and curriculum coherent to facilitate effective delivery of distance learning.
You have overshot your time, so conclude.
Yes. I'm concluding in a short while, Mr. Speaker. Only one point. The Ministry of Education should provide sufficient resources. The County Director of Education should continuously assess the readiness of school facilities to ensure that they are meeting the minimum health and safety standards necessary to support COVID-19 mitigation strategies. And finally, the Ministry of Education should engage with all like-minded decision makers and education leaders to inform decisions related to educational priorities and facilitate school reopening. Mr. Speaker, sir, the committee will continue to engage the Ministry of Education and other stakeholders in order to keep the House and the entire country updated on this matter. I thank you.
Okay, now there was a bit of confusion. You are supposed to have issued a statement under Standing Order 47-1, but you have issued under Standing Order 51-1 as the chair of Sessional Committee on Education. So maybe the other one you'll issue it next week. Now I call Senator Khaniri. Under Standing Order 47-1.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for this opportunity. My statement is on the handling of COVID-19. It's unfortunate that I am giving the statement soon after our chair for the Senate Committee on COVID-19 response just resigned. But I am confident that the remaining members should be able to handle. We had a lot of confidence in Senator Sakaja and his team, and they were doing a very good job. Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to the standing order, to the provisions of Standing Order number 47-1, to make a statement on a matter of national concern which is the handling by both national and county government of the COVID-19 situation in Kenya today. Mr. Speaker, we must have this discussion now, given the fact that the government relaxed the cessation of the movement in and out of the country's hotspots, and new infections and death from COVID-19 are rising. We need to find urgent solution to the challenges presently with us. Mr. Speaker, today, one of the greatest threats to human life is the virus severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2, which is SARS-CoV-2, that causes COVID-19 disease. About 4 months ago, we had our first case of this deadly virus reported in our country. Currently, confirmed cases in the country are above 11,000, with a death toll of over 200 people and rising exponentially. Worldwide, the confirmed cases are over 13 million, with a death toll of above 500,000 people. The actual figures are definitely above this. As the Senate, we took the decision to deliberate this pandemic through a select committee that has so far done an excellent job. Around the world, people are struggling to learn and handle this virus. Every day, more is being discovered with mixed reactions. Our demographic and population distribution demands that we handle the dissemination of information and management of this virus differently. While the structure of county governments is relatively new, they are now at the center of fighting this pandemic. Mr. Speaker, the past 2 weeks after the relaxation of the containment measures, especially the partial lockdown, have seen a sharp rise in the daily reported confirmed cases and deaths. This is very worrying and demands that both levels of government act urgently. We need to seriously interrogate the preparedness of both levels of government, protection of health workers, home-based care, and individual citizens' responsibility in this fight. Mr. Speaker, the country needs leadership now more than ever. This pandemic has devastated countries, and we must not let that happen here. It is already led to debate whether the lifting of the cessation of movement in and out of Nairobi, Mombasa, and Mandera was wise. We need to hasten the preparedness of counties in terms of isolation centers and hospital capacity. A good number of counties have managed to surpass the national target of isolation beds, ventilators, and ICU beds. However, Mr. Speaker, it is unfortunate that up to date, 4 months since the first case was reported in the country, some counties do not have a single intensive care unit ICU bed and ventilator. Quite unfortunate. Some isolation centers identified and earmarked by counties are not up to standard for human habitation. These counties are our weakest link in this fight and must be compelled through conditional allocation to achieve the set targets. After all, they are using public money. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Health needs to provide clear procedure to the public on how to respond to suspected COVID infection in the counties. While in Nairobi, the ministry had provided a toll-free number, what happens in the villages? The Ministry of Health has the responsibility of educating the masses on the correct materials and making of face masks with assured protection. In some places, any nose and mouth cover is considered protection. The ministry needs to ensure that the required medicine to manage this virus is in supply and accessible throughout the country. The Kenya Medical Supplies Authority, KEMSA, should provide statistics on its ability to supply the required volumes of these drugs. The issue of testing also needs to be streamlined, from increasing capacity of testing in counties, subsidizing the cost of testing, and ensuring the accuracy of the tests. Mr. Speaker, one of the most important groups of people in this fight is the health workers. It is painful that we have already lost some to the pandemic. We cannot afford to lose any more of these frontline soldiers to the disease. 3 issues that I believe need to be addressed urgently are: the government should fast-track insurance to all medical practitioners, provide them with personal protective equipment, and hiring of additional medical staff across the country. If we fail to protect the healthcare providers, who will take care of the sick, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, during his address to the nation on Monday, 6th July 2020, the President emphasized citizen responsibility in this fight. We all must take the necessary measures to prevent the spread of this disease. The discussion should not end here. All of us need to be vigilant and encourage each other to embrace the preventive measures. One person has the potential to infect or protect so many people. We should also agree that it is not possible for the government to police everyone and ensure that we abide by the Ministry of Health or Transport guidelines. New information that the virus is airborne and can have long-term far-reaching consequences on a number of body organs demands that we take extra caution. As elected leaders with wide appeal, we should take this information to every part of the country and assist where possible. Madam Speaker, economically, the pandemic has affected the government, companies, and individual households negatively. This is replicated world over. The economic debate has been the main reasons why governments have decided to ease containment measures such as lockdowns and suspension of travel. Even with the relaxation of these measures, it is not wise for the public and business to completely ignore the prescribed public health guidelines. Proper wearing of face masks, frequent sanitization, avoiding large gatherings, and safe traveling must all be adhered to. The government must enforce these measures to the greatest extent. Parents and the entire community should also commit to look after school-going children who are now at home. Each one of us has a role to play. And in conclusion, Madam Speaker, my message to Kenyans of all walks of life: stay at home if you can. Properly use the recommended face masks, sanitize, keep social distance, and to those in Nairobi and other hotspot counties, avoid unnecessary movements to other counties, especially rural counties, which have a greater population of senior citizens and poor health systems. Madam Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity.
To comment. Senator Malala, you said you wanted to ride on, or you want to make a statement, or you want to add another? You want to add a statement on to that? Under 48 one?
He will seek a statement.
Okay, go ahead. Let's just give him that. Senator Cheruiyot, we are going to give you an opportunity to make comments after that.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I requested for this time because the statement that I want to request is related to what my good senator has been raising about the effects of COVID-19 pandemic in Kenya. Madam Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order number 48-1 to seek for a statement from the Standing Committee on Education concerning the disbursement of government capitation funds to schools and the measures put in place to cushion teachers employed by schools' board of management and non-teaching staff during the COVID-19 pandemic in Kenya. In the statement, the committee should, 1, provide a detailed report of the total amount of government capitation monies that have been disbursed to schools since March 2020 by the National Treasury in line with the Ministry of Education guidelines for the implementation of free education. 2, state the balance of government capitation monies yet to be released, if any, and the specific timelines when it shall be released to schools. And lastly, Madam Speaker, the committee should explain the specific measures, if any, put in place by the government of Kenya to economically cushion teachers employed by the school's board of management and non-teaching staff during the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you.
Yeah, still on that, Senator Wetangula.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I also have a statement under 48.1 on COVID-related issues. Madam Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 48.1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Education regarding the payment of salaries for teachers in private schools following the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic that has led to the closure of schools and other institutions of learning. And I'm happy that the chair of the committee is right here. In the statement, Madam Speaker, the committee should explain whether the Ministry of Education, under the general government cushioning of several groups, has carried out an assessment on the plight of private school teachers in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic, noting that schools have since closed, thereby denying private schools teachers who depend on payment of school fees to earn their salaries. Number 2, Madam Speaker, the committee should elucidate measures the Minister of Education plans to put in place, if any, to ensure that the plight of such teachers in private schools, many of whom have been rendered jobless, is addressed. Number 3, the committee should explain, Madam Speaker, whether the Teacher Service Commission has a database of all teachers teaching in private schools, as well as a deficit of teachers in public schools, and whether there are plans by TSC to absorb teachers from private schools and allocate them to public schools. More importantly, Madam Speaker, the teachers who teach in private schools are all dependent on the running of schools and the payment of fees which comes per term. Now that the schools are closed, you saw the sad case, Madam Speaker, in Mombasa, where a teacher took his life because he could not bring food to the table for his family. He was teaching in a private school, the school is closed, he can't go to school, he can't moonlight, and the family cannot make ends meet. I would want to urge, Madam Speaker, that the committee engages the government, the Minister of Education, just like the President has announced these safety net measures to cover people in tourism, to cover people in other sectors, kazi mitaani, to at least help these teachers in private schools meet their basic obligations of rent, utility payment, and food for their families so that they can be able to make ends meet. On the statement made by Senator Khaniri, Madam Speaker, I would want to urge the Committee for Health that there are very disturbing unfolding stories about mismanagement of COVID funds. Stories are now emerging every single day about the mismanagement of procurement of COVID-related issues at KEMSA. In fact, we have been told through the media, Madam Speaker, that KEMSA has procured goods and services worth 7.7 billion without any procedure. This, Madam Speaker, we must note that is under such crisis moments that people with bent ideas take advantage of the situation to do things that are unorthodox. I want to urge the Committee of Finance.
Senator Wetangula, just 1 minute. I'd like to ask Senator Ongeri to approach the chambers as Senator Wetangula concludes.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to urge, Madam Speaker, the committee chaired by Senator Sakaja, which I'm told he is now resigned, and I believe Sylvia Kasanga, who is the vice chair, may take over and continue with the good work. I want to encourage Senator Sakaja to resign from the chairmanship, which he has already done, but to remain a member of the committee because he has done a very good job.
Senator,
so
I
far.
think you are now mixing issues because you are reading a statement,
I have
then
finished.
you continue to now make statement on Aniris,
You,
and now
you gave me two prompt permissions to make my statement because it was COVID related.
Yes.
And to comment on Senator Haneri's statement on COVID.
And yeah,
because
please
his was under 47.
let us end it there, please.
Yes. So let me end by urging the committee on COVID to not only bring statistics on what is going on, but to also ensure, in conjunction with the Committee on Health, that all the resources being channeled by the government from taxpayers and donors to manage this pandemic is put to good use, is accounted for properly, and reaches the target groups so that we can see that Kenyans benefit from these resources. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Yeah, Honorable Senators, I'm only going to give you an opportunity if you want to comment on Senator Haniri's statement, because it is under 41.1. But statements on 48.1 and the statement by Senator Wetangula and the statement by Senator Malala will not, will not allow comments on that, but only on Senator Haniri's. So I'll only give you an opportunity if you want to comment on 47.1. Senator, no, first of all, what's the point of order?
Madam Speaker, I rise to seek your guidance. Senator Wetangula and myself raised pertinent issues to the chairperson on Committee on Education. I would wish that you give directions and timelines as to when we shall expect answers on the issues that we have raised before we start contributing on the next statement.
Definitely, we are going to commit those two to the committees, but you see, you raised on 48.1, and under 48.1, according to our standing orders, there should be no comments. We just commit to the respective committees. Timelines we are going to give. Let's just allow senators to comment on Senator Aniri's statement. Senator Ongeri.
Madam Speaker, I rise to comment on Senator Kaniri's statement because my observation in the last few weeks, we have obviously seen the spiraling of this COVID-19 within the communities. And we've seen the behavior of people becoming more and more casual without any due regard to the intensity and the problem at hand. We have also seen that whereas before we were dealing with the external source of COVID-19, it's now gone to community spread. Not only has it gone to community spread, but it has also gone to some social gatherings where either in funerals or in other form of gatherings that are really creating a great danger to the society within the country. I've also noticed that county governments are not becoming very proactive in anticipating the rise in some of these COVID-19 cases. I may venture to say that unless we take a very proactive action and be able to put in place the protocols that have been clearly defined and pronounced by the Ministry of Health, that we are likely to run into a wild situation, into a dangerous situation where it may be very difficult to cope with those that may land up in our hospitals requiring intensive care unit and treatment. And therefore, Senator Kaniri's statement has come at a time to remind ourselves on the gravity of this COVID-19 and not to take it as one of those other elements Of course, it's my expectation that as it runs through, that whatever may be taken into account, that we should minimize the complications that arise out of this COVID-19. My anticipation is that eventually people will form the innate immunity, that these mild infections might be able to evoke what we call an immunological response that will be able to give enough titers of antibodies to protect the populations from any further attack from this COVID-19. The only other worry is that if the mutation of this COVID-19 goes to another level and therefore becomes wild, but I don't expect so, but if we can be able to conform to the protocol that has been set out for ourselves, i.e. social distancing, very critical, very important, a simple measure that will be able to help people to ward off this pandemic that is coming in a very rapid way. Secondly, hand wash. And as we know, the virus is normally denatured by use of soap. The soap is fairly alkaline, and this COVID-19 is acidic. Therefore, when you neutralize it with an alkaline solution, which is soap, it is likely to be neutralized without causing much harm and much difficulty to the people. And finally, because I've seen the yellow button, I would like to comment more that one of the things that is important is being able to keep yourselves protected, particularly the frontline workers. I'm one of the professionals, and the frontline workers now needs to be protected because we need them more than ever before. I thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity to contribute on this topic.
Honorable Senators, we are really running out of time. We still have a lot of statements. We have so many people to give comments on Senator Haniri's statement. I would like to kindly urge you to spend like 2 minutes so that we give as many people as possible opportunity, and at the same time, we race against the time. Senator Cheruiyot, 2 minutes, Senator.
Okay, I'm guided, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity. I rise to support this statement by our colleague, Senator Haniri. It raises very fundamental issues of the challenge that our country continues to face. And I'll quickly move on to further requests to the Committee on COVID that we formed in this House and urge them to look into all the emerging issues as we handle this pandemic as a country. Madam Speaker, of late we have been receiving updates of all the things that the Ministry of Health is doing. It will be of interest to this House, Madam Speaker, if the committee can also tell us what our scientists are doing with regards to trying to find vaccines that can help this pandemic. It's not proper for us to be reading about what people are doing in Oxford University, Johns Hopkins. I believe our scientists are none less scientists than those from other regions. And there have been breakthrough investigations in other diseases across the world that have been achieved by African countries. So it will be important if they can advise us on how far our research institutions, if there are challenges of funding and the rest, let them be brought to fore so that we can continue investing in research. Madam Speaker, since the opening of the country, after the much talked about lockdown, I would also wish to challenge that our county governments begin giving daily or at least even weekly updates on what they are doing at county level. It will be important for you to find out what Governor Professor Nyong'o is doing in terms of preparedness to face this pandemic in Kisumu County, how many isolation beds are ready, and all the things, the same figures that the minister continue to give. It will be important for them to also tell us how many people have been found to have tested either positive and the test that they're carrying out, so that we understand what is the preparedness level of each and every of our country. Finally, Madam Speaker, I would also wish to urge the President, because I've read that there will be a summit meeting on Friday where the President has invited governors, but these meetings continue to be just a PR exercise where governors go and give a report. It will be important if next time they invite senators from these respective countries, because we oversight counties and we know for sure what is the true state of preparedness in a particular county. Therefore, Madam Speaker, at the next meeting, at least if not individual senators, invite members of that, our COVID committee, who can give an actual and true reflection of what is the status of things in various counties. With those main remarks, Madam Speaker, I support. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, I would like to ask Senator Naomi Wako to approach the chambers as I allow Senator Gertrude Musorove. 2 minutes.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to support the statement made by Senator Haniri. And I want to say that this statement has really come at the opportune time when COVID cases are escalating. And Honorable Speaker, when we just flash back, we see that from the time of the partial reopening, then the cases have really escalated. But since a lot of talk has been done concerning COVID, that it is here to stay, then we have to know as a country which direction we take in order to ensure that we are flattening the curve. And a lot needs to be done, Honorable Speaker. Senator Haniri has mentioned, especially in the counties. It is painful, Honorable Speaker, to realize that in the county, most of the people in Mashinani, you'll find that they're not wearing masks, they're not even keen about, closing their nose, their mouths and all that. They're taking it so normally. But I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that there are preparatory measures that need to be taken in order for this awareness to be effective. We have to ensure that we bring on board key decision makers, Honorable Speaker. Like teachers are very, very effective in disseminating information in Mashinani. And also we have chiefs, we also have religious leaders, Honorable Speaker. So they need to be brought on board so that this awareness can be effective. It is really painful that people are taking for granted this issue of COVID, and yet it is a reality. Many people are losing their lives, even people who have really contributed, to economy, socially and politically, their lives are being taken away. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, just recently we had Papa Shirandula, who has also succumbed. It is painful, and I want to pass my condolences to, the fraternity of us in this country for losing such a person. I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that we must take this pandemic seriously. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that senators also need to be brought on board when it comes to raising awareness on issues of this pandemic, Honorable Speaker. Because even when we go to the counties, you find that you have no role to play. Most of the time,
Senator, time up. Time up. Senator Owako, please. 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for allowing me to come in and also add my voice to this very important statement. Madam Speaker, the situation in our country concerning COVID-19 is a serious one, and it's unfortunate that as a country, we are not paying a lot of attention and we keep on losing many people. I would want to comment on the lifestyle of our young people, whereby they keep on, interacting closely, and that will cost them their life. And I think some measures have to be put in place so that our young people will also take care of themselves in their homes or even at any place that they gather. Again, Madam Speaker, the churches or religious centers have been opened, but even as a result of this, we should expect worse situations maybe, and therefore, I believe our God is everywhere, and trust that, our religious leaders will be just careful so that, we don't get emotional and say that we need to be in church, and that may cost us our lives. Madam Speaker, the neighboring countries are not suffering as much as our country. I wonder what they are doing differently from our country, and so I would want to urge the Ministry of Health to borrow maybe or to do some research and see what is happening in Tanzania, Uganda, so that if there is anything they are doing and we are not doing, we can also apply. Madam Speaker, it's unfortunate that we keep on losing our people, very famous people, and even us as leaders and Senate should also be careful. Madam Speaker, because we interact a lot.
Senator, time up.
Okay, thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Pokisho, Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, let me use my 2 minutes to congratulate Senator Haniri in bringing this to our attention. Madam Speaker, we cannot say enough about how we need to handle the COVID situation in our country. The very fact, Madam Speaker, that we are leaders means we need to, first of all, understand and accept that COVID is real as leaders, so that as we go out there as politicians, Madam Speaker, we should not be caught in situations which compromise what we have preached. And for that matter, Madam Speaker, we should really not be the ones seen to be gathering people in rallies and in huge meetings. I suggest if there is a meeting like that, Madam Speaker, that leaders themselves should be supplying these masks, so that in the crowd, whatever, in the meetings, they might have, all the people may have the masks, because I think it's very important we protect them. But more importantly also that we protect leaders. And because we need them here, and we need them in the country. So I also want to ask, Madam Speaker, that when we relate with the county governments, we need to take them to tasks as well, because some of them got the monies and some of them have just sat on the monies, and they are not using the monies to do what was supposed to be done. While we congratulate the governors who have done something, there are some who should be on the list of shame, and those should be brought to our attention so that we know who is not using the money which has been given to all counties. Above all, Madam Speaker, it's all about understanding the disease and what you can do. And the simple instructions that are given, those are our duties should be to help our people understand and accept. I know in the rural areas, Madam Speaker, some people take it for granted that once we have no case, because we have not announced any case from, say, West Pokot, which is still clear, no case. That doesn't mean the county should go to sleep. It means that they should be prepared in case. Now that the country has been opened, we should not, there are a lot of people traveling from Nairobi, from other areas, and very soon you'll start having those cases. So if you're not prepared, you won't be able to help. So I support and hope that the committee will take concern.
Senator Faki.
Asante Bispika kwa kunipa fursa hii kuchangia taarifa iliyoletwa bungeni na Senator Khaniri, Senator wa Vihiga. Mheshimiwa Spika, ni kweli kwamba maradhi ya corona yameingia katika nchi yetu na kwa sasa visa vingi vinaripotiwa kuhusiana na maradhi haya. Hivi asubuhi, Mheshimiwa Spika, niliweza kuzuru hospitali ya Aga Khan na ripoti niliyopewa pale ni kwamba vyumba vyao vya ICU vilikuwa vimejaa wagonjwa. Na wale ambao hawakuweza kupata nafasi kule waliwekwa katika ile wanaita high dependence unit, ambao pia wanachukua wanahitajia vifaa vya kupumua na vingine.
Sorry, Senator Mwaura, kindly approach the chair.
Mheshimiwa Spika, jambo la kusikitisha ni kwamba katika kaunti zetu nyingi hazijakuwa na uwezo wa kuwa na vitanda vya ICU. Labda zilizoweza kupata, nafikiri sasa ni kama kaunti zisipungua 7 ama 8. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, hatari iliyoko ni kwamba wengi wa wale wagonjwa itabidi waje Nairobi ili waweze kupata matibabu ya ICU kama hayo. Kwa hivyo ni muhimu Mheshimiwa Spika kwamba kaunti zetu zijitayarishe na vitanda kama hivyo, kwa sababu tunavyoona visa vikiongezeka na watu wengi wanaondoka katika mji wa Nairobi, mji wa Mombasa kwenda sehemu za mashambani, na maana kwamba baadhi yao wanachukua ugonjwa na kupeleka sehemu zile za mashambani. Kwa hivyo ni hatari ambayo itakumba nchi iwapo vitanda kama hivi havitakuwa katika sehemu nyingi za kaunti zetu. Mheshimiwa Spika, tumeona pia vile vile kwamba watu sasa wameweza kupumua au wameweza kurelax, nikitumia lugha ya Kiingereza, katika kupambana na janga hili la corona. Utaona kwamba watu wengi mjini wanatembea bila barakoa, watu wengi hawaoshi mikono mara kwa mara, hawatumii sanitizer, na zote hizi ni vitu ambavyo vilikuwa vinahubiriwa kwa muda mrefu kabla ya kurelax hizi haya masharti. Kwa Mheshimiwa Spika, ipo haja ya watu kurejelea tena katika uhubiri wa haya masharti ili kila mtu aweze kujua kwamba ugonjwa bado uko. Ni labda nafasi tu imetolewa, lakini ugonjwa bado uko, na ugonjwa vile vile ni hatari na umekuwa hatari zaidi, kwa sababu kwa sasa wale ambao wameathirika na wakaondoka ulimwenguni hawakuchukua muda wa siku 3 ama siku 4. Kwa siku 2 au 3 wameweza kupoteza maisha. Asante
Senator time. Okay, that's fine. Finally, Senator Faria.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. I also wish to thank Senator Khaniri for bringing this matter to the House. Madam Speaker, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in this country in terms of how we prepare, in terms of how we prevent, in terms of how people are informed, in terms of the way forward, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, right now we are being told, even our Director of Medical has just confirmed that there are interesting development in Oxford University in terms of the development of vaccine. Once that mass testing is done and this appears to be helping, then are we waiting until that time, or we start engaging now so that we collaborate in terms of that vaccine, or in terms of even having availability? Imagine a country like America with that big population. If their population is being affected that much, they'll be the first ones to order. What are we doing about it? Shouldn't we be proactive in terms of ensuring that we are next in the line once we are convinced that that vaccine works, Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker, let's be real. The COVID-19 is affecting livelihoods, Madam Speaker, of our people. Madam Speaker, it is killing people who are, who are active in terms of labor to ensure that food production and security of our livelihood is now not being taken care of properly. Madam Speaker, in terms of the teachers, Madam Speaker, it was so heartbreaking to see a teacher who didn't pay his rent for 3 months, who has been locked by the landlord. Madam Speaker, all of us went through teachers, Madam Speaker. And I think it's high time that government takes at least the teachers who teach private school some money, so that they can also
Senator,
be taken.
wind up,
so that they can be taken care of, so that we don't see. Madam Speaker, even there's other impacts, like there are some people who are even they are allergic to sanitizers, for example, as well, and they're really suffering in terms of getting reactions and even looking for medication as a result of the reaction from the sanitizers, Madam Speaker. So our people need to take care.
Senator, time up. Time is up.
Okay, thank you. Just one final word, just to
Honorable Senators, for the sake of time, we still have so many statements and we have only 10 minutes to go. We have to abide by our own standing orders. Senators, we have committed the 3 statements to their respective committees, and giving a timeline of 2 weeks, not about, but of 2 weeks to report back on the statements. The next statement is by Senator Kwamboka, is not in the House. Senator Abshiro Halake.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have 2 statements on the order paper. I don't know if you'll allow me to just present all 2 of them, or...
Just go ahead and read the 2 of them,
okay.
And please try to summarize if possible.
I will. They're very short.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order number 48-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare regarding the provision of training opportunities for persons in the public service who living with disabilities. In the statement, the committee should state whether persons in the public service living with disabilities are accorded equal opportunity to attend trainings or workshops, especially those that are held outside of their duty stations. State whether this is a policy, there's a policy in place which caters for the welfare of for them and provides them assistance or aids for the said persons when the trainings and workshops are held outside their duty stations, and provide a report of trainings and workshop opportunities, if any, that have been organized by the Public Service Commission and the Ministry of Public Service, Youth and Gender Affairs, in which the said persons have benefited over the last 2 years. And I would also like to see what provisions have been put in place for them to actually be trained remotely or participate remotely in meetings and other opportunities to do so, Madam Speaker. I thank you. Madam Speaker, I have a second statement. This statement has been on the order paper for quite some time now, and it regards automation of land registries and general land records in the country. And this statement has actually been overtaken by events because I think there was a petition to that effect. But for purposes of emphasis on the need for this, I would just read through because it'll take me like 2 minutes. Madam Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order number 48-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Lands, Environment and Natural Resources on the status of automation of land registries and general land records in the country. In the statement, the committee should provide a detailed report on the status of automation of all our land registries and general land records by the Ministry of Land and Physical Planning in all our counties, confirm the status of the new Digital Land Information Management System, LIMS, that was expected to be operational in all the 61 land registries countrywide by end of April 2020, bearing in mind that the registries were put in place in February 2017, supplied with computers and connected to the internet to pave way for implementation of digital transactions for land, and state the availability of online services from the Ministry of Lands and Physical Planning to Kenyans across all counties, particularly given the prevailing COVID-19 circumstances, especially knowing full well that land is an asset that is used by our communities for different things, including collateral, including certain issues to perhaps liquidate the land as an asset that they can liquidate to take care of different issues and different needs. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Mwaruma, please make your statement.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 48-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Land, Environment and Natural Resources regarding the status of Voi Point Limited, formerly known as Voi Sisal Estates, which is on LR number Voi Town 28683 in Taita Taveta County. In the statement, the committee should, 1, clarify whether the land is agricultural or commercial and state how much has been charged on the title deed. 2, explain whether there has been a request for change of user by Voi Point Limited in accordance with the Physical Planning Act and the physical regulations, and if so, provide evidence of such request. 3, state whether approval was granted for the request by the county government of Taita Taveta and whether the county government involved the public in compliance with Article 118 of the Constitution before giving consent for change of user. Number 4, provide information on the amount of money paid by the Kenya Railways Corporation as compensation to either Voi Sisal Estate, Voi Plantation Limited, or Voi Point Limited, as the case may be, during the construction of Phase 1, that is Mombasa, Nairobi, of the standard gauge railway. 5, provide a detailed identity of the planners and the surveyors involved in the process of subdivision of the land on LR number 28683 and outline the purpose of the subdivision. 6, state who authorized the subdivision of the land, given that the parcel of land is charged to Diamond Trust Bank Limited. And 7, state whether the plight of the residents who live in the Sisal estate and those who were chased out by Voi Sisal Estate investors and whose houses were demolished and are currently advocating for their land rights and Mkamenyi Cooperative Society. Madam Speaker, let me just say one thing. We have gone with the Committee of Lands to this Voi Sisal Estate, currently known as Voi Point Limited. We promised the residents whose land was taken away by encroachment or through encroachment by Voice Isle Estate, that they'll get back their land. We have not given the feedback to those people, and we had given in 2019, a period of 1 year to respond to them. I think we need to expedite action because people were removed from their land. We even saw graves as evidence that people are living there and they were chucked out. We need to really respond to these issues, which are very pertinent to these people. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. Senator for Mombasa, Senator Mwinyi Haji Faki.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise pursuant to Standing Order number 48-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Roads and Transportation concerning the ongoing reconstruction of the Makupa Causeway, Digo Road, that leads to Jomvu area. In the statement, Madam Speaker, the committee should, 1, state the scope of the works being undertaken on the said road, from Barclays Bank, Digo Road, Mombasa to Total Fuel Station in Jomvu area. Number 2, state whether the roadworks include demolition and reconstruction of the Makupa Causeway. And number 3, state the cost of the said works and indicate the estimated date of completion of the same. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Mwaura.
Sorry, Madam Speaker. Am I supposed to read my statement as well?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to seek a statement from the ad hoc committee on COVID-19 situation in Kenya regarding persons with disabilities who have benefited from COVID-19 response fund set up by the national government. The number, to seek about the number of. Then I also read the second one. I rise to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Roads and Transport regarding the number of persons with disabilities who have benefited from the Kazi Mtaani program by the national government.
Thank you, Senator. I don't know if Senator Cheriot is in the Cherargei. Oh, Senator, you are not in your usual place, so my eyes may fail to see you. Go ahead and make your statement.
Thank you, Chair. I have two statements. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Pursuant to Standing Order 48-1, I rise to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Energy on the issue of loss of 7 billion penalties paid to investors behind Lake Turkana wind power project. In the statement, the committee should, 1, explain why the ministry has paid over 7 billion for penalties to contractors, yet the 4,430 kilometers highway voltage power project from Lake Turkana to Suswa in Narok, which is worth 28.9 billion, has not been completed. Second, state the cost of the project since from June 2018, the government was to pay 1 billion monthly for these delays in connecting the plant to the national grid and the suspect declaration of bankruptcy in the Spanish company, which could be been a well-drawn script to swindle the public funds in penalties for the delays. Third, explain the government has spent billions to pay for rainers as penalties since over 1,000 casual laborers were shipped from China to complete the project after the exit of Spanish company. Fourth, state why the Kenya Electricity Transmission Company, Kentraco, acceded to punitive clauses in the contract that it would pay the penalties if they complete the project before the transmission line is completed. And finally, explain the government has paid the latest 1.6 billion despite the National Assembly recommendations that no payment should be done until special audit is done in all the payments done. Madam Speaker, in my second statement on the request for statement on the issue of public notice issued by Kenya Medical Research Institute, KEMRI, that they will no longer be handling samples of and testing of COVID-19. Madam Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 48-1, I rise to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Health on the issue of public notice issued by Kenya Medical Research Institute, KEMRI, that they will no longer be handling samples and testing COVID-19. In the statement, the committee should, 1, explain why Kenya Medical Research Institute has stopped collecting, handling, and testing of COVID-19 in their headquarters and all their branches in the country. Second, explain the roles of the institutions and the reason why any walk-in by members of the public will not be tested of COVID-19 at any Kemri laboratories in Kenya, thus exposing Kenyans to extortion from the private laboratories. And finally, Madam Speaker, state the actions, if any, that has been taken by the Ministry of Health to ensure accuracy and credibility of the samples being tested in both private and public laboratories to avoid wrong results being given to Kenyans as witnessed in the past few days. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senators. That brings us to the end of the statements. And under statements 48.1, we commit all the statements to respective committees and give a timeline of 2 weeks for them to bring the concerns or the replies to the statements and the concerns of members of the Senate. Honorable Senators, because of time and under normal circumstances and under our standing orders, it's not a must that we make comments on 48.1. So we go ahead to the next order. Order. The other statement.
This one was 51.1A. This is a report of a committee.
They are not on my. Chairperson of Sessional Committee on Delegated Legislation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Standing Order 51.1 of the Senate Standing Orders provides that a committee chairperson may make a statement relating to a matter for which the committee is responsible for. In fulfillment of this provision, I wish to make a statement regarding some of the statutory instruments referred to the Sessional Committee on Delegated Legislation. On the 5th and 19th of May 2020, during sittings of the Senate Majority Leader tabled the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Regulations 2020 and the Traffic Driving Schools, Driving Instructors and Driving Licenses Rules 2020 respectively. Honorable Speaker, the Traffic Driving Schools and Driving Instructors and Driving Licenses Rules 2020 were published on 20th of March 2020. The rules seeks to streamline the operations of driving schools and driving instructors with the aim of ensuring competency of drivers on our roads. The regulations set out comprehensive curriculum to be used in the training, testing, and licensing of driving instructors, motorcycle riders, and drivers of different categories of vehicles. At its 18th sitting on 15th of June, the committee scrutinized the rules and resolved to approve the rules pursuant to Standing Order 221-4A. The clerk conveyed the resolution of the committee to the Minister of Interior and Coordination of National Government, the Minister of Transport and Infrastructure, Housing and Urban Development and the Public Works, and the National Transport and Safety Authority, NTSA. Honorable Speaker, the committee also scrutinized the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Regulations 2020, published on 22nd of April 2020. The regulations have been long awaited and will replace the Public Procurement and Disposal Regulations 2006. The operationalization of these regulations will enhance procurement processes in the counties as well because the 2006 regulations did not envisage a devolution. The regulations will operationalize various provisions of the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Regulations 2015 and strengthen procurement procedures. Some of the provisions introduced by the regulations include: A, shorter timelines in the procurement procedures that will enhance service delivery to citizens. B, promotion of local industries by ensuring that tender documents targeting multinational agencies contain requirements for inclusion of at least 40% inputs sourced locally and reservation of employment opportunities for Kenyan citizens. C, requirement of payment within 60 days from the date of receipt of the invoices subject to availability of funds to ensure prompt payment of suppliers. D, responsibilities of county governments with respect to public procurement and asset disposal. E, management of procurement contracts. F, disposal of assets. And G, procedures to be followed while using the existing methods of procurement of goods, works and services, and inclusion of community participation as a procurement method. The committee held a total of 17 sittings to consider the regulations, including meetings with stakeholders, Council of Governors, Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, Law Society of Kenya, the Kenya Institute of Supplies Management, and on the 3rd and 4th of June 2020. The committee also met the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury and Planning on the 17th of June 2020. The committee expressed its reservation in a few of the provisions of the regulations which needed to be aligned to the Parent Act and the Statutory Instruments Act 2013. The Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury and Planning took note of the committee's concerns and gave an undertaking to remedy the offensive provisions and republish the same in the Kenya Gazette. At its 25th sitting held on 4th of July, the committee resolved to approve the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Regulations 2020. Pursuant to Standing Order 2214A, the clerk has conveyed the resolution of the committee to the Cabinet Secretary, National Treasury and Planning. Honorable Speaker, this is therefore to bring to the attention of the Senate the approval of the Public Procurement Regulations 2020 and the Traffic Driving Schools, Driving Instructors, and Driving Licenses Rules 2020. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the various ministries, departments, and institutions that have continued to support the committee while discharging its mandate. We shall continue to give our regular updates to the Senate on the status of the various instruments that are pending before the committee. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Kilonzo Jr.
Just on a point of order, the statement read by my good friend Senator Faki is actually a very important statement, but based on regulations that are also very critical. What I was wondering, maybe I missed one session, and maybe the chair can clarify. Wouldn't it have been better, Madam Speaker, to actually get a committee report on those regulations? We in this House actually made a lot of effort in doing amendments on the Public Audit Act, Public Audit and Disposal Act. The statement is good, Madam Speaker, but we are then left short-handed in terms of information. Can the committee chair clarify whether there's a report available which can be circulated in the normal manner to senators on these regulations? Because I participated in some of the things about blacklisting contractors, and I would greatly benefit from seeing how the committee has handled the regulations with respect of blacklisting people, cowboy contractors who continue violating the law on public procurement. Thank you.
Senator Faki, can you react to the concerns of Senator Mutula Jr.?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Under the Statutory Instruments Act, where the committee resolves to approve the regulations, we don't need to make a statement to the Senate. It is only where we are rejecting that we make a statement to the Senate, and that particular statement will be voted for by the Senate in order to be approved or to be rejected. So under the Statutory Instruments Act, we are not obliged to make a statement unless they require us to make a statement. The Senate obliges us to make a statement.
Senator Mutula, are you satisfied with that response?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. The committee, and Senator Faki and I sat in the Committee of Legal Affairs when we were discussing the COVID rules. We were actually supposed to come up with a report under the same statutory instruments. Although even in whether you reject or not, I was just asking whether wouldn't it be plausible for the committee to consider, irrespective of what the statutory instruments says, this is a matter so important to all of us as senators on public audit that the committee tables a report of some sort, that they agreed with the regulations in some form, because the report of the committee would not only tackle regulation by regulation, it would help us in terms of information on how they have made sure that the Public Audit and Disposal Act is now being implemented through those regulations. I appreciate the portion where the law does not require a report. What I am asking for is whether the Speaker can find it necessary to direct the committee to prepare a report, whether it's a report on the regulations themselves, because we have not had sight of them, because it's a very important statement, but it will just slide away without any input from us or any reading. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the request by Senator Mutula is very fair. We are in this house to educate ourselves and to get as much information as possible, and it is in the interest of all of us and the people that we represent. Information is very critical. So, Mr. Speaker, the chair of the delegated committee, is it possible that you provide such information, because it is in the interest of all of us that we got more information?
Madam Speaker, if you look at Standing Order number 2214, if the committee accedes to the statutory instrument, the clerk shall convey the message to the relevant authority. If the committee does not accede, the committee may recommend annulment of the instrument to the Senate. If the committee fails to agree, the instrument shall stand approved. Madam Speaker, I'm entirely in the hands of the Senate, the House, that if you guide us to make a statement, we shall make a formal report to the Senate in regard to these particular regulations. But our own standing orders say that if we annul, it's only when we annul that we are supposed to make a statement to the House. If we accede to the regulations, we just make the clerk conveys the information to the relevant ministry, and that will be the end of the matter. Thank you.
Senator, I think we can refer ourselves to Standing Order number 51, 1B, where it at least once in every 3 months, it is required that you give, the committee is required to give a report, and maybe you make it more detailed so that it satisfies the needs of other members of this House. Next order. Okay, thank you, Senator. Where is the leader of majority? We don't have anybody who can be delegated that responsibility, so we move on to the next order. For the next week. Do you have the information? But you're not a member of the SBC? So you can't. You don't qualify, Senator, to... Yes, Minority Leader. Minority Whip.
Under the standing orders, in the absence of the majority leader and any member designated in the majority side, the minority and a member of SBC, if I read the standing orders correctly, can make that statement. So that we don't have to wait. And particularly because... Madam
Senator, you can go ahead and make it. I hope you have the information with...
No, I don't. Oh, the majority leader is here, after all. Just on time. He was just waiting. Thank you.
Majority Leader, you are just on time. You are almost passing.
And I was holding your brief.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'm sorry. Madam Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 52.1, I hereby present to the Senate the business of the House for Tuesday, 28th July 2020. On Tuesday, 28th July 2020, the Senate Business Committee will meet to schedule the business of the Senate. On that day, 28th July 2020, the Senate will consider bills scheduled for second reading, and those at the committee stage of the whole, at the committee of the whole stages. The Senate will also continue with the consideration of business that will not be included in today's order paper, in addition to motions, petitions, and statements. Madam Speaker, I had mentioned in my statement last week, bills that are due for second reading are 19, while another 20 bills are at the committee of the whole stage, including those in the order paper for today. The Senate Business Committee will prioritize these bills accordingly. In respect, I continue to urge the relevant standing committees to use the available opportunities on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, and even Fridays, and various electronic virtual means of holding committee meetings to expeditiously conclude consideration of these bills and table reports pursuant to the standing orders. Individual senators who may have amendments to bills are encouraged to file the same in good time to allow the Senate Business Committee to schedule the bills. Madam Speaker, before I conclude, I also wish to draw the attention of the House to 57 petitions pending before respective standing committees. I urge the standing committees to expeditiously conclude with the petitions and to table reports pursuant to Standing Orders 2232-2. Madam Speaker, I thank you, and I here lay the statement on the table of the House. Thank you.
Senator Wetangula.
I'm happy that the Majority Leader has mentioned the issue of pending petitions. Madam Speaker, Kenyans have a lot of faith in this House. That's why every single sitting day we have 3-4 petitions. But every time petitions come here, Madam Speaker, the chair commits them to committees, and that's virtually the end of the matter. I want to urge the Majority Leader and the leadership of the House, particularly the Procedure and Rules Committee, to amend our standing orders, Madam Speaker, so that one, we bring back the implementation committee that can deal with the resolutions of the House and committees. We had that committee, it was mysteriously scrapped, and this House has no implementation mechanism of following up our resolutions and committee resolutions. Number two, Madam Speaker, every time the petitions are committed to committees, and our standing order is to bring back the outcome within 60 days. No committee ever meets that. We have petitions that have been pending before committees for up to a year. And this is going to demoralize wananchi and people who have faith in this House. Comparatively, Madam Speaker, when you look at the number of petitions that go to our counterpart House, there are a lot fewer than petitions that come here. So I want to urge the chair and the leadership, one, to find a better mechanism within our standing orders on how to process petitions and bring back results, and two, an implementation mechanism not only on petitions, but all other resolutions of this House.
Senator Kelonzo Jr., you have a...
I want to agree with those sentiments. I'm also a member of SBC, and I'm similarly warning myself. But, Madam Speaker, I just want to propose to the Majority Leader, because I'm aware like in the Legal Affairs Committee, we have completed all our petitions. Perhaps it's in, the majority leader should find space somewhere in the order paper where these responses to these petitions are listed until they are completed. So that if you have the petition, for example, on the person who said we should remove the cockerel from the emblem, it's listed, and therefore the chair is obligated to stay here until that report is tabled. Because there's a reason why we have so many petitions, including a very urgent petition filed by the Deputy Speaker about a sale of a building in Eldoret. When that petition takes a year, then the purpose of that petition and what the county government of Uasin Gishu was doing, buying an old ramshackle house for an exorbitant price, is defeated because they will buy quietly and it will be water under the bridge. We cannot, in some form, and majority leader can do so, and maybe the chairs of chair and committees of liaison, it's actually more of liaison committee, even more than SBC. When they meet, they should agree on the format of how committees can sort of finish these matters quickly. And even when the petitions come here, Madam Speaker, they are only tabled. And then the petitioner is given a report. The chair is only required to say something if it is necessary. So there's no reason for those delays. Thank you, Speaker.
Senator Zani, do you have to make a statement on that?
Yes,
a
thank
comment
you.
on that?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And thank you for this statement. And just very quickly on the petitions, I think Senator Kilonzo Jr. has already mentioned that they're time-bound. One of the techniques that some committees use is just having subcommittees, because if you have a committee of about 9 people and you have subcommittees of about 3 people each, you're actually able to fast-track the petition. So maybe we can encourage some of our committees to do that. And then looking at the order paper, we had a motion on 9, which is to help us to use virtual methods. I think that is going to be very critical for us. Why I raise this, Chair, is because of the issues of the bills. If you look at the bills 13 up to 21, we've had these on the order paper for the last subsequent meetings, and maybe we need to find a way to balance. Yes, I know statements also come, and they also have their own priority, but some of these bills also have to do with the current issues that we lose the momentum of if they don't come at a specific time. I know the COVID management bill has already gone through. This is one only example of a bill that is timed to what is happening within the country. So I just urge that we find very ingenious ways of being able to push the agenda. And I think what has been proposed at motion 9 would be something we'd support and find mechanisms for do this. I appreciate that we have a lot of orders on our order paper, a lot of business on the order paper, and I think we are up to the task, and I think we will have it all done very well. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Finally, Senator Mwinyi Haji Faki.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wish to echo what Senator Wetangula and Senator Junior have said on the issue of the petitions. And even on statements, Madam Speaker, I made a statement here in the month of May in regard to the shooting of a Kenyan aircraft in Somalia. Up to now, nothing has been done about that statement, Madam Speaker. And according to the IATA regulations, there's supposed to be an interim report within 30 days of the happening of the incident. That report has not been issued, and I understand although it has been signed by the Kenyan government and the investigator, the Somali government has refused to sign that statement up to now, and there's nothing that is going on. Madam Speaker, the danger here is that we are going to lose confidence. The members of the public are going to lose confidence in the Senate's ability to deal with these issues. At the moment, Madam Speaker, the family is in agony. About 5 Kenyans died. None of them has been compensated. The insurance company cannot process the payments because at the moment there is no report of the accident that has been issued. So, Madam Speaker, there is an urgency in terms of the disposal of the business, in terms of the statements and the petitions, so that members of the public continue to have confidence in the Senate as a house that considers their issues promptly and in a manner that satisfies their rights and obligations. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
And finally, Senator Faria.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think this is almost the 4th week I'm sitting here with a bill that is almost on the top of all the bills, and it's never reached. Madam Speaker, I think we either bring back the session in the morning so that we allocate some time for statement and some time for the bills. People with bills can come in the morning, because if we don't dispense with these bills, Madam Speaker, we have a limited time. And our bills, unfortunately, have to go to the other house, so they take a lot of time. Madam Speaker, I think we need to find a solution. And one of the solutions, I think, is either statements we do on alternate Tuesdays, or we sit in the morning and people with bills can come in the morning to dispense with their bills, and then in the afternoon we have the usual statements and issues that are pressing for this country. Madam Speaker, we need to find a solution. I thank you, Madam. And SBC needs to tackle this matter as a matter of urgency. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Yeah, thank you, Senators, for your concerns. It has been brought to my attention that the Speaker has scheduled a meeting on Thursday with the SBC, where all the issues pertaining to petitions, pending business, and statements will be addressed. So I think we leave that to rest and wait. I will look forward to the resolution of that meeting. I thank you. Next order.
Order number 8, motion, provision of cemetery, funeral parlors, and crematoria in all counties.
Honorable Senators, we cannot execute that business because of lack of numbers, and we therefore defer it. Next order.
Order number 9, motion, approval of the third report of the Procedure and Rules Committee on amendments to the Senate standing orders to facilitate virtual sittings of the Senate and its committees.
Chairperson, Procedure and Rules Committee, Professor Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to move the motion that pursuant to Standing Orders 252 and 255, the Senate approves the third report of the Procedure and Rules Committee on amendments to the Senate standing orders to facilitate virtual sittings of the Senate and its committees, laid on the table of the Senate on Tuesday, 16th June 2020, and pursuant to the provisions of Article 124(1) of the Constitution and Standing Orders 255 and 257, resolves to amend its standing orders as contained in Appendix 1 of the report, and 2, orders that the amendments of the standing orders as contained in Appendix 1 to the report shall come into effect upon approval. Madam Speaker, Article 124 of the Constitution mandates each House of Parliament to establish committees and make standing orders for the orderly conduct of its proceedings, including the proceedings of its committees. The current Senate standing orders were adopted by the Senate on the 14th June 2017, pursuant to Article 124 of the Constitution of Kenya. 2, the standing orders have subsequently been amended by the Senate on the 14th December 2017 and 9th August 2018, pursuant to Standing Orders 248 and 249 of the Senate Standing Orders. 3, Standing Orders 252 stipulates that the Procedure and Rules Committee may, at any time, propose amendments to the Senate Standing Orders. The Procedure and Rules Committee is expected to make a report to the Senate recommending the standing orders, if any, to be amended. Standing Order 185 of the Senate Standing Orders establishes the Procedure and Rules Committee with the mandate to, among others, proposing and considering proposed and amendments to the Senate Standing Orders. Madam Speaker, the membership of the committee is as follows: Senator Kenneth Lusaka, EGH MP, the Speaker of the Senate. 2, Senator Professor Margaret Kamar, MP, Deputy Speaker of the Senate, as the Vice Chair. 3, Senator Dr. Tumbesi Lelekwe, Senator Rose Nyamunga, Senator Judith Pareno, Senator Dr. Christopher Langat, Senator Beth Wamboi Mugo, Senator Dr. Agnes Zani. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, in view of the COVID-19 pandemic, parliaments across the world have had to modify their rules of procedure in order to transact business in a safe environment. The Senate Business Committee thus resolved that the Procedure and Rules Committee review the standing orders to provide for the Senate to sit in exceptional circumstances. Madam Speaker, the Senate Business Committee, at its sitting held on Monday, the 18th May 2020, considered a paper on the use of online meeting platforms for the Senate plenary and committee sittings, and resolved that the Procedure and Rules Committee reviews and amends the Senate standing orders to actualize virtual meetings and other alternative arrangements for sittings during the COVID-19 pandemic. In particular, the Procedure and Rules Committee was mandated to table proposals for amendments of the standing orders to provide for the following: A, online, virtual, or remote meetings for plenary and committee meetings during the COVID-19 pandemic period and any other time when the senators are not able to physically meet due to a national emergency and catastrophe. B, mechanisms to determine attendance and quorum for the plenary and committee sittings and prescribe the manner of voting during such meetings. C, plenary and committee sittings to be recorded and documented in Answered and posted in the Parliament website for access by the public. D, issues of privileges and immunity of senators during a virtual sitting vis-a-vis the location of Parliament and parliamentary precincts. E, etiquette, including dress code and other order in virtual meetings. F, mechanisms for access and admission of witnesses and stakeholders into the online, virtual, or remote committee meetings. And G, finally, mechanisms for access and admission of the media into the online, virtual, or remote plenary and committee sittings. Madam Speaker, according to the World Health Organization, coronavirus COVID-19 is an infectious disease caused by a newly discovered coronavirus. COVID-19 spreads primarily through droplets of saliva or discharge from the nose when an infected person coughs or sneezes. Most people infected with COVID-19 will experience mild to moderate respiratory illness and recover without requiring special treatment. Older people and those with underlying medical problems like cardiovascular disease, diabetes, chronic respiratory disease, and cancer are more likely to develop serious illnesses. Madam Speaker, at this time, there are no specific vaccines or treatments for COVID-19. However, there are many ongoing clinical trials evaluating potential treatments. The best way to prevent and slow down transmission is is to be well informed about the COVID-19 virus, the disease it causes, and how it spreads. Protect yourself and others from infections by washing your hands with soap, water, or rub frequently using an alcohol-based sanitizer. Maintain social distance, especially from anyone exhibiting flu-like symptoms. Avoid touching your face. Practice respiratory hygiene by coughing and sneezing into a tissue or a flexed elbow and staying at home. The first COVID-19 case was confirmed in Kenya on the 13th March 2020 by the Ministry of Health. The government immediately put in place prudent and necessary measures to curb the spread of the disease, forcing organizations, including Parliament, to evaluate the manner in which it carries out its business. Mr. Speaker, with regard to the Senate continuity plan, one, in a circular dated 13th March 2020, which is Annex 2 of the report, both speakers of the Parliament issued guidelines to all members of Parliament and staff to prevent and, when necessary, contain and mitigate against the spread of the coronavirus, which included suspending all foreign travel and official engagements within the Parliament premises. On 31st March 2020, the Speaker of the Senate issued guidelines regarding Senate plenary and committee sittings during COVID-19 pandemic. See Annex 3 of the report. Some key highlights of the guidelines were that plenary sittings would commence at 2:30 p.m. and end no later than 4:30 p.m. During the plenary sittings, the chamber would sit a maximum of 28 senators only. Immunosuppressed senators and staff whose ages were 58 years and above, and those with chronic illnesses such as hypertension, diabetes, cancer, and HIV were encouraged to work from home. The Speaker's gallery and the public gallery would not be occupied by all persons except the 4 technical staffers facilitating the sitting. And there would be no consultation at the Speaker's chair or at the clerk's table. Mr. Speaker, Senate committees were encouraged to transact as much business as possible remotely to reduce the need for physical meetings. Where it was absolutely necessary to hold a physical sitting of a committee, such sittings would be held only in the Senate chamber or in the mini chamber. Not more than 1 committee sittings would be held in either chamber on any day. The Senate chamber would not be available for committee sittings on the days on which the Senate is scheduled to hold its sittings. Additionally, the media and the public were barred from accessing committee sittings, and committees were encouraged to make use of written submissions or responses from the public. Mr. Speaker, on the 17th April 2020, the Speaker of the Senate issued further guidelines for Senate plenary and committee sittings during the COVID-19 situation. See Annex 3. The guidelines, as with the guidelines issued on the 31st March 2020, were limited in their application to the duration of the COVID-19 situation. The salient features of this were as follows. On a day when a plenary sitting of the Senate was scheduled, a senator who was not among the 28 members formally designated to be present in the chamber would be deemed to have attended and to be present during the sitting if the senator, 1, had come to the presence of Parliament for purposes of sitting, 2, was at the senator's office within the presence of Parliament, and 3, had been recorded and certified by the clerk to be present. B, a senator who was deemed present in terms of paragraph A above would be considered and reckoned to be present for purposes of voting, and their vote would be conveyed through the Senate Majority Leader, Senate Minority Leader, and a senator so designated by them. Mr. Speaker, such guidelines have continued to facilitate smooth operations of the plenary and committee proceedings. However, they have not been without challenges. For instance, at a sitting of the Senate held on Tuesday, 5th May 2020, you yourself, Mr. Speaker, Senator Mwaura, rose on a point of order and sought the guidance of the Speaker on the matter of the voting procedure in the Senate, citing the guidelines issued on 17th April 2020 as having been misconstrued as depriving senators of their right to vote. The issues were clarified in a communication issued on Tuesday, 19th May 2020, where it was noted that the guidelines that were issued on the 17th April 2020 were introduced to ensure efficiency in the roll call method and for better time management in the chamber, as well as to ensure that all county delegations have an equal opportunity of voting on matters concerning counties, whether they made it to the list of the county of the 28 senators designated to sit in the chamber or not. This was achieved firstly by construing the team present and voting as used in the Constitution to mean not just the senators sitting in the chamber, but also those others within the designated places in the presence of Parliament that were deemed to be part of the extended Senate chamber. And secondly, by allowing all the votes, once cast by the senators themselves, to be communicated at once by the respective leaders during the roll call instead of each senator in the chamber standing to answer the roll call and the votes of those outside the chamber being communicated by a different media. Mr. Speaker, further, at a sitting held on 22nd May 2020, a special motion to remove the Deputy Speaker of the Senate from office was moved. It's the first such kind of motion in the history of Kenya. Such a motion can only pass by a resolution supported by the votes of at least 2/3 of its members. This is just one of the matters that has a constitutional threshold of 2/3 majority. Resultantly, in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, the Speaker issued further guidelines on how to facilitate such a kind of a sitting in line with the tenets of the Constitution. The concept of designating rooms adjacent to the chamber was further refined in this communication. The lounge area in the new wing was designated as an extension of the chamber, noting that only 28 senators can be accommodated in the chamber. Seats were designated for the senators, Senate leadership, and other senators were admitted on a first-come, first-served basis. Senators who missed a seat in the chamber were directed to sit in the newly designated area in the new wing. Mr. Speaker, in addition to this, a senator seated in the extended chamber in the new wing wishing to make a contribution in the debate was required to record his or her name with the clerks. The list of senators wishing to contribute to the debate was handed to the Speaker, who called out the senators to speak. And a senator whose name had been called out to contribute to the debate walked into the chamber, bowed at the bar, and proceeded to make his or her contribution from the dispatch table. Upon conclusion, the senator withdrew from the main chamber and resumed his or her seat in the extended chamber in the new wing. During voting, the senators in the extended chamber walked into the main chamber and cast their vote from the dispatch table in the manner set out in the standing 83.5, and thereafter withdrew from the chamber to their respective sessions of the Senate brought about by the outbreak and spread of COVID-19 continue to pose unprecedented legal and procedural challenges in conducting virtual plenary and committee sittings, such as procedures for verification of identity of members, voting privileges and immunities of members, verification of quorum or comment during the sitting, and access by media and the public to sittings and proceedings of the plenary and committee sittings, particularly when the plenary and committee sittings are held virtually. Mr. Speaker, these challenges may be adequately addressed through designing virtual platforms and having the rules in place to ensure that the plenary and committee sittings comply with the law and law and practice on each of these areas in a manner that can be documented and verified. Mr. Speaker, sir, the conduct of business in plenary is mainly executed through parliamentary debates, deliberations, and resolutions. Matters requiring the decision of the House are always decided by putting the question from the chair by the Speaker once a motion has been made by a senator. Debates are designated to assist members to reach an informed decision on any subject matter. When the debate ends, the chair normally puts the question and the House proceeds to a division, i.e. the electronic voting that we have always done, to determine which side has the majority votes. On the other hand, the Senate committees enable the House to organize their work in such a way as to perform numerous activities simultaneously and expeditiously. Their roles include finding out the facts of the case, examining witnesses, sifting evidence, and drawing up reasoned conclusions. Their composition and method of the procedure are structured to reflect those which prevail in the houses, making them microcosms and extensions of the House. The proceedings of a committee which meets without a quorum are invalid, and decisions taken are not binding. The Senate standing orders specify the quorum of committees and provide that unless a quorum is achieved within 30 minutes of the appointed time, a meeting of a committee shall stand adjourned. Mr. Speaker, The committees are also expected to facilitate public participation during the lawmaking process through inviting submissions of memoranda, holding a public hearing, consulting relevant stakeholders in a sector, and consulting experts on technical subjects. The above procedures have been defined. The traditional have been defined in traditional parliaments, where physical presence is a must for a decision to be recorded. However, the current COVID-19 pandemic thus presents a new challenge where the business has to be conducted virtually with requirements to meet the threshold as set out in law and parliamentary standing orders. Mr. Speaker, fundamentally, virtual parliaments make use of online tools like video conferencing to permit parliamentarians to participate in proceedings without being physically present, whereas such a model would adhere to the WHO and the Ministry of Health of Kenya guidelines on social distancing. A virtual and hybrid model would enable the application of the guidelines on social distancing. It would present constitutional and legal concerns and deny the House an opportunity to practice crucial traditions and customs that are important to order and decorum in the House proceedings. Mr. Speaker, such practices include, but are not limited to, when a senator is called out to speak, she or he rises in his or her place to speak. There are sitting arrangements in the House where the majority side, majority side is on the right side of the Speaker and the minority are on the left side of the Speaker, whereas the political leadership have seats designated to their side. The sitting position of the Speaker and the clerks at the table, bowing at the bar when speakers enter and leave the chamber, tabling documents, significance of the Speaker's chair, for instance, application of Standing Order number 112 and Standing Order number 113, when crossing the floor of the House and senators remaining seated in their seats, and application of Standing Order number 114 on senators remaining in their places until the Speaker has left the chamber, vacating from the Speaker's chair during committees of the whole, drawing of the bar, and ringing of the division bell, amongst other traditions and practices. Mr. Speaker, concerns are also likely to be raised about the place of the mess, which is one of the most important symbols in the House, as a symbol of the constitutional authority of the Senate and the Speaker. Without its presence in the chamber, Senate cannot lawfully meet, debate, or pass laws. Although the standing orders of the Senate do not recognize the mess, its significance cannot be gainsaid. The National Assembly standing orders recognize the mess in its Standing Order number 2A, that provides that the mess of the House embodies the authority of the Speaker and the House, and shall be kept in safe custody by the Sergeant-at-Arms. In a remote or virtual model, the place of the mess would be difficult to define or even place. Mr. Speaker, a hybrid model entails combining the current system as it is and one that allows a senator who is not physically present in the House or a committee meeting to participate remotely through a designated virtual platform. Such a model will enable the Senate to preserve its traditions and practices. Mr. Speaker, the committee is of the view that the hybrid system will therefore be the most ideal. Whereas such a model is not perfect, with modifications, it addresses the constitutional and legal concerns that arise with a full virtual or remote model. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move and ask Senator Zani to second.
Thank you very much, Mover. Seconder.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I beg to second this motion on the approval of the third report of the Procedure and Rules Committee on amendments to the Senate standing orders to facilitate virtual sitting of the Senate and its committees. The report has been, the motion has been moved by Senator Kamar very aptly. And this is a very interesting area because many parliaments did not foresee that COVID would happen, and yet a balance has to be created to ensure that legislative matters get addressed continuously on a continuous basis. The standing orders that we have, therefore, do not have provision or did not have provision for virtual interaction as we know it. And therefore, the timing for this report, I think, is very, very critical. Mr. Speaker, I'm a member of this committee, and I remember even this meeting was held virtually, and very aptly so. Mr. Speaker, over time, I think we've been able to innovate ourselves in a very comprehensive manner, and we've been able to take the situation that we've been in such a way that we've been able to progress. Mr. Speaker, already quite a number of committees are able to now meet through Zoom. We've been also having a hybrid system of meeting within the Senate where we've been having the extended chamber. But I think what this report, the third report, really intends to do is to identify those nitty-gritty areas that might move us away from constitutionality and application of rules within the Senate and address this in a very, very precise way. And this is what this committee sought to do, to ensure, for example, that as we have our online, virtual, and remote meetings at the plenary or in the committee during this particular period, senators will be able to understand exactly how to go about it, looking at the mechanisms to determine attendance and quorum, how to present ourselves, for example, in detailed aspects. A lot of input has been made, for example, about how senators will present themselves, that they will have the camera on them. When it comes to issues like voting, for example, Mr. Speaker, knowing very clearly that we wouldn't want a situation where somebody can vote on behalf of somebody else, or where we might even have the whole system hacked, Mr. Speaker. You can imagine somebody else turning up for that meeting, making themselves look like you, and then they're just talking there like Senator Mwaura, and then later on we come and you say, oh, it wasn't me. You know, it would be completely catastrophic. So how are we able to ensure that the identity is well in place? And many forums have suggested that the person must appear. And sometimes also we have situations where you find somebody has put their photograph. That photograph should not be of them cycling at the park, for example, because it might distract people. Mr. Speaker, I know you've been watching and following up on social media about the various incidences that have happened during video conferencing calls, where we've had members, for example, stand up or take a picture accidentally to an area like the kitchen and expose what they're cooking, etc., etc. So we wanted to ensure that we're able to put all these things into place, mechanism for determining attendance and quorum, how to really organize our plenary and committee sittings. And Mr. Speaker, what we have adapted so far in this Senate is a hybrid system, not completely virtual, because we have the issues that Senator Kamar raised very well about, for example, where do we put the mess? And I know even in other forums where we've gone virtual, it hasn't been complete virtual. There's an element of hybrid system where we actually have just fewer people, like we've seen for masses and for services, for TV transmissions, where we can actually aptly have the necessary things that are meant to be there. We have the speaker there, but we definitely have fewer people. The issue of recording and how that recording is meant to be done and how it is meant to be done and documented in Hansard, that's very critical, and that needs still to be maintained. And indeed, Mr. Speaker, in many of the meetings and in the propositions that we're making in these standing orders is that we have Hansard reports. We have reference points. We have the same audio recordings. Mr. Speaker, in essence, what we are just diverting and changing a little bit is the fact that we're not able to meet in the physical space, but we can conduct our business as though we are still together. Mr. Speaker, the rules of speaking, the rules of muting, the rules of not everybody speaking at the same time, all these are very critical and have been addressed within these standing orders, for example, so that when somebody is given a chance to speak, that is when they will speak. So that when one person is speaking, maybe another person will not interrupt, so that people can mute and unmute themselves at the right times. The issues of privileges and immunity of the senators during virtual sittings vis-a-vis the allocation of parliament and parliamentary precincts is also addressed, and this is very important, that once you are in either a full virtual or a hybrid system in a meeting, which is considered a plenary of the Senate, that you are still able to have the issues of privilege and immunity in place. And indeed, the precincts specifically been destined to be the county of Nairobi, which is our main sitting space in Nairobi. But I'm sure also the standing orders will be versatile enough so that even as we move to the counties and within the county mashinani engagements, we'd be able to factor that also into place. And then the etiquette of dress code and order in virtual meetings is very, very key, and I've already mentioned that. Mechanisms for access and admission of witnesses and stakeholders into the meeting, virtual, remote,
Senator
and committee
Zani,
meetings. Yes?
Are you suggesting that in virtual meetings people can dress half formal and half informal?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In fact, I was just about to crack a joke as I went there on to the setup, and then they get out. I think it's about presentation, Mr. Speaker, and indeed, in our case, it is about formality. We already have a dress code that we use when we come to the plenary precincts. That is expected also within the virtual setting. You cannot appear there with a swimming costume, for example, or in a designer suit, or looking casual because of the nature of the work that we do. And likewise, even when it comes to the pictures that you put in the background. So these sort of rules, most of the setups that have already put video conferencing, for example, have already put these very, very specific rules. And we are also coming in very strongly to contextualize them within the session of the Senate. Mechanisms for access and admission of witnesses and stakeholders into the meeting, very, very key. In fact, in the sense of identity, for example, ensuring that the person coming on is able to do what they're expected to do, is coming on at the right time. If they have material, that material has been vetted by the clerk, and this is what the standing orders are prescribed, that the clerk has already vetted the material, and that people are able to share this material virtually on the various forums that they're using. And then mechanisms for access and admission of the media into the online, virtual, or remote plenary, that has also been put into place, in the sense that media is allowed, and I think in many of the committees where we have met virtually, we've had media being able to come in there. I think the experiences across the world have really made people just have to be innovative. This report gives in detail, and I will not go into that, the various experiences and benchmarking that this committee has done, just to show what other countries are doing and how Kenya has been able to handle it. So examples, for example, from the United Nations right through to the European Parliament, Brazil, Germany, Spain, Italy, Romania, France, Estonia, Australia, and all these Maldives, Poland, South Africa, Norway, the United States of America. All these have been, in one way or another, been using these practices. And I think by stating it this way, Mr. Speaker, it gives us the confidence that we are on the right track. But more important, not only are we setting the pace for understanding of COVID-19 and its effects, but also really trying to mitigate for these particular factors ourselves. The issue of distancing, social distancing, being able to keep the space, the issue of security and safety, the issue of not infecting others. I think this is what is very, very critical and very, very important, and this is what the various procedures are meant to put into place. So fundamentally, of course, we have the pros and cons of the meeting virtually or through hybrid, and I think I've mentioned a bit of this, the issue of, the practice of standing, for example, to speak and how that is going to be handled. I think it's just going to be handled by somebody sitting just respectfully and being able to just, face their camera and say what they need to be able to say. The issue of, for example, security and logistical concern, threats of hacking, all these have to really be minimized, and the report advocates that this should be. In fact, Mr. Speaker, now people are moving into forums where we can have access to round-the-clock technical support, where we can be able to ensure that the proceeding is safe, it can be conducted well, and it can be conducted in such a way that people can understand what is happening. Mr. Speaker, the hybrid system that we have used, even though initially seemed a bit complicated, we had the speaker sometimes calling somebody from the other chamber and then they have to rush into the other chamber. But I think over time, that has been streamlined, and now from the other chamber, somebody can just indicate that they want to speak and they are given a chance, and in advance, they can know that their turn is coming and they can quickly come into the house. So the hybrid model entails combining the current system as it is and one that allows the senator who is not physically present in the house to participate remotely through a designated virtual forum. Mr. Speaker, there are certain specific amendments that are also recommended in this particular report in Appendix 1, just to go through some of them very, very quickly. And one is a sitting of the Senate where a physical sitting is not possible, as the Speaker might, in consultation with Senate Business Committee, determine. So that is now formalizing that specific process, and this will be both for the plenary and also within the committees. The Speaker may also issue guidelines for the conduct of a virtual sitting of the Senate or a meeting of the Committee of the Senate, including guidelines for the effective participation by persons with disability in a virtual sitting or meeting. And that consideration is very, very important, so that, for example, in a parliament where we have a member who is otherwise abled or gifted in a different way, for example, if it is somebody who needs, for example, to use Braille, that is availed to them, because this system should not create further inequalities in any way. And Mr. Speaker, if I may just refer quickly to what has happened in the educational sector and a big debate over time, because in many of the schools, for example, where virtual learning has taken place, we know that it's not all students who have been able to have access to this virtual learning. So it is an experience, and I know even within the University of Nairobi, for example, and other universities countrywide, people are grappling about the issue of how to issue exams and how do they handle it at such times. Is this student going to fill an exam form somewhere alone, for example, at a cyber cafe? Will that exam be valid? Should the exam be maybe more critical analysis oriented rather than memory recall? And all these issues are coming. It's the same issues that would come within the precincts of a Senate like here when we include this sort of thing. So it's very, very important to ensure that everybody is able to communicate and be able to really be brought up to speed and be able to be in the space where the virtual sitting gives everybody a chance. At 251B, convening of a virtual setting, where the Speaker determines that a sitting of the Senate is held virtually, the Speaker shall issue a notice, just like the way any notice is given about the business that needs to be transacted. And Mr. Speaker, in a very innovative way already, through this virtual method, a lot of committee work is already being done by sending these agendas in advance, by sending, for example, the issue of the business that is going to be transacted, what business it is, the date and time of the sitting also being indicated. on the online platform, also through the sitting and exactly where it will be conducted. The issue was also the date and all these other logistics being put into place also is very, very critical. If it is an online platform, how do we access that online platform? The details of that are given, whether it is a password, whether it is a direct entry into Zoom. Mr. Speaker, you'd be pleased to know, because I know you've also been part of the IPU family, even at the IPU level now, meetings are being held through virtual networks to ensure that the agenda and the discussions are taking place. So once the time, date, place has been allocated, then people are able to move into exactly what is expected. Again, also, in this particular 251B, in terms of the amendments that have been made, in the case of a hybrid system, the venue for purposes of the senators who shall be physically present at the meeting. So we will then, anytime we have a hybrid meeting, ensure that there's a space for this physical space for some of the senators and also the various other procedures. Again, the whole issue of a notice being able to be given and in adequate time being able to be given as well. Very, very key also is the powers, privilege, and order in the virtual sitting, and I mentioned that, Mr. Speaker, the immunities that are bestowed. Lastly, 251D deals with the issue of decorum, Mr. Speaker, and I will not repeat because I'd already mentioned it, but the chairperson or the presiding officer or the clerk will also be virtually responsible to ensure that the speaker the senator who is seeking on a point of order on the procedure, or who wants to talk, or who has a technical issue, is taken care of. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, in most of these virtual meetings, and in our case, the clerk plays a very, very critical role in admission, in giving the chance, and in dealing with any technical issue that comes. A senator participating will adhere to the standard set. That is very, very key. And the issue of a secure link also is given within those particular specific amendments. Also, how to deal with a technical problem. Mr. Speaker, every time somebody gets a technical problem, other members tend to feel, oh, now they have a technical problem. But there's nobody who does not end up having a technical problem. Technology is technology, and it tends to always backfire when you don't want it to backfire most. And Senator Kamar will remember recently, Mr. Speaker, when we had a meeting recently in the committee, and members were just waiting to be able to submit their input, and some members had the unfortunate incident of them being completely switched off until much later. So I think that the technology and the technical problems, I think also will need very innovative ways. For example, now I see many senators calling in and being put on loudspeaker, for example, so that they can be able to speak. So all these have to be quite well navigated across our standing orders, so they run like the way we would practically run within the Senate. The issue of quorum also is very, very critical in address. The issue of voting on time, a specific time being given for the voting, the names of the senators and how they have voted, that's been spelled out very, very quickly and very, very easily. The issue of using a roll call or doing this electronically, well handled within the system. The system must be able to verify the votes, either electronically or manually. The integrity and confidentiality of the vote must be and is maintained, and the technology is simple, accurate, verifiable, secure, and transparent. Therefore, voting can take place without a problem. 251G deals with access, public participation, and witnesses. 25H deals with receipt and transmission of documentation virtually through the sharing that is done within those particular setups, facilitating access to electronic documents to everybody. And then
Senator,
also
kindly
wrap up.
your vote,
Yes, I'm wrapping up in a minute. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The whole issues of witnesses and everything, and then broadcast of virtual sittings, a virtual sitting of the Senate, how that is meant to be done and how it's meant to be recorded. So finally, as I wrap up, Mr. Speaker, really, we have had two systems, or we have two systems to us available, a wholly virtual system and a hybrid sitting. And the recommendation that's been made on this report is that we can go hybrid, especially for the plenary sittings, but also for the virtual virtual sittings, especially in committee, we can go completely virtual, but all the rules have been put into place. I thank this, this committee for having done this report. I second this motion for the adoption of this particular rules to facilitate virtual sitting of the Senate and its committees. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much for that. I propose the question that pursuant to Standing Order 252 and 255, the Senate approves the third report of the Procedure and Rules Committee on amendments to the Senate Standing Orders to facilitate virtual sittings of the Senate and its committees laid on the table of the Senate on Tuesday, 16th June 2020, and that pursuant to the provisions of Article 124(1) of the Constitution and Standing Orders 255 and 257, 1, resolves to amend the standing orders as contained in Appendix 1 to the report, and 2, orders that the amendments to the standing orders as contained in Appendix 1 to the report shall come into effect upon approval. Senators, I have 3 requests. Senator Gertrude Musuruve, Senator Milgo Alice, and Senator Haji Farhia Ali. And looking at the time, I would kindly ask of you to share this time well so that everybody can speak. But as you also make your contribution, it would be good to profit from your observations around how also the Senate needs to conduct its businesses, especially because you are seeing that we are taking up to around 5:30, and we are still discussing about standing statements. But statements are not really the substantive order of the House. The substantive business of the House is bills, motions, and especially legislative work. And if you can look at our standing order from standing order number 10, you see we were supposed to go to the committee of the whole House. So kindly also you address yourself to that, and please also give us thoughts about whatever innovative ideas around how to ensure the legality of such proceedings, because you can see the committee has actually done a very good job with regards to looking at all the various aspects. So to begin with, Senator Gertrude Inima Musuruve, you are the first on the floor.
Honorable Speaker, thank you for giving me this opportunity to support this motion. And Honorable Speaker, just allow me a second. I know that the statement hour is over, but there's an issue that was raised that needs to go on record concerning persons with disabilities. And Honorable Speaker, you talked about this.
Sorry, Senator. Mover, kindly approach the chair. Proceed, Senator Musuruve.
And Honorable Speaker, you raised a statement about Kazi Mtaani initiative where youth was supposed to be given jobs in the 47 counties. And there is a statement by PS Kibicho who said, who actually tweeted that people can apply as long as they're able-bodied, and this is very discriminatory. It should not even happen, this kind of statement from a state officer. So there's need to investigate how many persons with disabilities have been given these jobs. And also issue of PWD training, Honorable Speaker. Many persons with disabilities are not given an opportunity to train even in the public service, and apart from public service, other also organizations, in government. There is need to these two statements to be pursued so that persons with disabilities have an equal right, just like anybody else. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Now I just want to go to the motion that has just been brought on the floor of this House. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, this motion has come at a good time. It has come at a time when globally, people are just wondering how to behave with this pandemic. And Honorable Speaker, everyone will agree with me, the children born, yet to be born, will know about the economic depression that this COVID-19 has caused the entire world. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that it is a time when many governments are really looking for ways and means of still surviving politically, economically, and also socially. So I want to say that this pandemic has affected people worldwide, and there's need to really come up with a mechanism that will ensure that people are still working, despite the fact that there's COVID-19. There's the issue of social distancing, and Honorable Speaker, you also agree with me that the issue of COVID-19, so many people are getting recruited, so many people are becoming victims of COVID-19, and we have to flatten the curve. And flattening the curve, Honorable Speaker, we have to encourage people to work as at home, and we have to continue raising awareness and sensitizing and all that, because Honorable Speaker, the world should not come to a stop because of COVID-19. Honorable Speaker, I want to commend this committee on the propositions on amending the standing orders, and it is important because when it comes to standing order, Honorable Speaker, standing orders are there to ensure that there's orderly proceedings. In as much as we are carrying out our mandate, there has to be an order. And I'm happy, and I want to commend the leadership of the Senate for the many amendments they've come up with. I remember at one point, Honorable Speaker, the 28 senators were supposed to be in the House. Then after some time, other amendments were made. 28 senators were supposed to be in the House and others in the plenary. And then other amendments also came up that 28 senators will be in the House. Yes, those on leadership positions and those with statements, and I want to say, Honorable Speaker, I should go on record that Kenya is a country to emulate, because even in the amendments, they even stated that even persons with disabilities should be given space, Honorable Speaker. And this is something very commendable, because I have seen a situation where the leadership has really felt me so much, and the leadership has actually empathized with my situation, because you see someone with a disability, sometimes you have a contribution to make. With my crutches, you're running up and there from the plenary to here, you want to go to the washroom, you don't know what to do. By the time the time ends, you find that you're not even yourself, you cannot make contributions. But because of the Senate leadership and the amendments, I'm able to come here, make a contribution that will benefit Kenyans, that will benefit everybody else, and I'm able to air out my views and thoughts. Honorable Speaker, I want to say that modification of standing rules is paramount. If we are to move on as a country, we have to see what other modifications can we make, because Honorable Speaker, everyone is affected, even globally. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that I'm happy about the committee, because it has really done an in-depth research on what is happening worldwide, because we see that in New York it is happening, virtual communication is there. When it comes to Estonia, it is there. When it comes to Norway, it is there. When it comes to Germany, so the committee has come up with what is happening out there. And Honorable Speaker, even for what is coming out up there, there's something to learn from South Africa.
Senator Musrube, kindly wind up in the next 1 minute or so. I'm saying just wind up in the next 1 minute, kindly. Sorry.
Honorable Speaker, just be audible. I'm not able to get you clearly.
Thank you for that correction. I am saying kindly wind up in the next 1 minute.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Now, when it comes to other parts of the world, like let me give an example of what the committee found in South Africa. Yes, there's the virtual communication and all that, but it was even open to the public. And in the process, even the public hacked the online communication, and pornographic materials were also infiltrated into the communication. So there's need to safeguard, so that in as much as we want public participation to be there, our clerks need to see how can they they safeguard so that we do not get, such information like it happened in South Africa. And also, Honorable Speaker, when you're talking of virtual communication, there's also need for clerks to work together so that there's no collision. In a situation where there are committee meetings, let committee meetings not be at the same hour, at the same time. They can have, an overlap, maybe at 11 there's a committee meeting, 12 another one, at 1 another one, but they should guard against, colliding. So I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that I actually support this, this report, and even in supporting this report, Honorable Speaker, there is need for us also, for committee members to be decent in their dressing, because when it comes to dressing is important. When we are going for meetings, we have to be formally dressed because it is a formal meeting. People should not dress like cowboys when they are going for online meetings, Honorable Speaker. So I support this statement, Honorable Speaker. Sorry, motion. Thank you.
Thank you. You saying that people should not dress as cowboys. That's very interesting, Senator Musurube. But I didn't also hear you saying how people can be in the same meeting, 2 meetings at the same time. That's also a concern. And, these COVID-19 virtual Zoom meetings and Skype have taught us that you can actually be multitasking. I mean, it may favor ladies more than men, but certainly there are some mischiefs that are happening as a result. So, Senator Dr. Alice Chepkoril Milgo, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me this time to also support this motion. And from the onset, let me thank the Procedure and Rules Committee for a very wonderful proposal. And I must say that this is a very impressive kind of proposal, having improved from the first, the second, the third. I'm sure by the time you go to the fourth proposal, you'll have refined in terms of amendment to the standing orders. Mr. Speaker, sir, this form of amendments is actually going to improve the way we attend meetings in the Senate, and it will go a long way to actually ensure that we dispense of the much work that is awaiting the Senate in this House. Mr. Speaker, sir, what this committee has produced will indeed show, or in this case, be a guidance to all other institutions in this country, because it will serve as a benchmark in terms of innovation or other ways. I remember recently, CORD in this case has been having a challenge, and if in this case they'll be able to follow what the Senate is doing, they'll be able to dispense with the many cases that has been a backlog in this country. Mr. Speaker, sir, if we shall adopt this, if the Senate will adopt this particular method of virtual, or rather hybrid, a mixture of both virtual as well as physical, it will join the league of the rest of the countries, and particularly become the second in the African continent after South Africa in terms of innovation. This is a time, Mr. Speaker, when those that are able to, in this case, innovate will become very effective, and in this case will be able to exist once this pandemic is over. Actually, Mr. Speaker, the fact that COVID-19 has affected very many businesses and very many activities in this country and the world cannot be overemphasized. As I'm speaking right now, Mr. Speaker, our schools are closed, and even as we prepare to open schools in January, Mr. Speaker, sir,
Senator Farhia, kindly approach the chair.
We do not even know whether those schools will be well prepared in terms of protocols and distancing, because of the fact that we've seen how COVID-19 is actually not having mercy at all. We've seen leaders being lost through this disease, and very many other activities affected. Mr. Speaker, sir, I support this kind of proposal because the committees in this House have been going on very well in terms of online meetings as well as virtual. And indeed, we've been able to conduct several meetings. We've even been able to achieve quorum away from the past meetings when at times we'd be able to postpone certain activities of the committees because of lack of quorum. I'm sure this hybrid system will bring on board many of the senators, and therefore many activities, Mr. Speaker, will be dispensed to. Mr. Speaker, sir, or earlier on, we would talk of many of the senators being analog. But I want to say right now, all of us are well educated in terms of ICT because we have been able to conduct several meetings via this particular method. Mr. Speaker, sir, I wish to say to really thank this committee because looking at the work that is before this Senate, looking at the 19 bills that are awaiting a second reading, we have 20 waiting for the committees of the wall. This one, in this case, may require, if we are going to go on the way we are doing right now, may require over 2 years. But then with this kind of innovation, I'm sure we'll be able to dispense of this, Mr. Speaker, and I would wish that we would organize ourselves around what we used to do in the past. In the past, we would set aside, out of the 3 days, we would have days when we are looking at statements and a few motions. There were motion days, and then there were days set aside majorly for bills. Mr. Speaker, sir, I think all the 3 items are equally important, and I would wish maybe with this hybrid system, we would have some morning and afternoon session because people would be available. And if it will not be possible, we now start alternating so that we'll be able to dispense of the bills that are on the that are before us. As we have said, there are certain bills that may speak to a number of issues in this country that should be passed before the close of business of this particular Senate. Otherwise, I actually want to laud the committee because they have gone ahead to even speak to the issues of etiquette in terms of dress, in terms of appearance during virtual meetings, and even in terms of following the standard how to join. And in this case, no senator will be affected in any way. Mr. Speaker, sir, as I said, once the senators adopt this method, it will only be number 2 in Africa because already I've seen that the European countries already adopted this. We have the UK, we have Estonia, we have the United States of America, which have adopted this. These countries have gone a long way, not only to adopt this method of work in Parliament, they have also adopted this method in terms of their courts, in terms of learning, and in terms of even conducting businesses. And I think we'll be able to borrow what this committee has done, and in this case, apply to other institutions in this country. Mr. Speaker, sir, I support this committee. You'll realize that if in this case, I remember this government, when they came on board in 2013, they had proposed to ensure that every child had a laptop. If this was done, right now the whole country would be conducting education via virtual learning, and I'm sure this is the way to go. We encourage our government to ensure that electricity is in this case, all parts of this country is connected to electricity, internet, and in this case we supply computers so that come the future, virtual meetings, virtual learning, virtual court casing, virtual ways of conducting business will be the way to go. Otherwise, I support this motion, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Milgo, Senator. And then finally, we'll have Senator Haji Farhia Ali.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also wish to join my colleagues in congratulating the committee for coming up with concrete solutions. Mr. Speaker, they say extraordinary times call for extraordinary solutions. And I think that is exactly what our committee has done. And that the fact that we are taking this innovation to the next level is good. As mentioned by Senator Musuruve, I think as much as our deliberations are public, and that committee work and everything that we do is for the public, there's need for some level of protection in terms of the interference from unwarranted interference, in terms of people who are getting into the space without the permission of the committee or permission of the House. That in terms of, we need an extra measure to ensure that that is safeguarded. And then we also need, Mr. Speaker, that sometimes people, when they, in the virtual, especially in committee meetings, I just see people either just a picture or just an empty screen, there forever. And then the person doesn't contribute. So you just wonder whether the person is in the meeting or is out of the meeting. So those are some of the things. I don't know how we can tweak it in such a way that at least there's a little bit of more transparency in how we conduct our business, so that people know that at least you're there and you're transacting business, and then if you don't contribute, nobody knows whether you're there or not. And then there is also in terms of people who have problems, health problems, and in terms of the interactions and then voting, and then of course the threshold required for voting and all that. Mr. Speaker, I think that bit we need to address it more conclusively so we understand what is the procedure. Because I was somebody who is not able to make it to this house because of their age and other problems. One time, requested me to vote on their behalf, but later that vote was not counted. So I think we need to be specific in terms of how that person can authorize the other person, either through writing to the speaker or wherever processes that is given, because it's unfair because somebody's age and because of their vulnerability to the disease, they opted to stay out, but they still want to participate in the voting of the House. Then we need a solution for that one, which is definite and very clear in these procedures, so that the person will follow that procedure and then they are helped in a way that is more acceptable. The other thing is in terms of voting, when you just stick in terms of the voting. I was a witness to a situation whereby somebody's vote was missed, yet I heard that person saying it. So if the extended chamber and this one, we create an ample time, we organize our agenda in such a way that during voting, people come and vote here so that they are in the Hansard and their voices is recorded. Because we don't want somebody who voted in a certain way, they are missed, and then that person feels bad that their vote did not count. And yet here we are here to transact business in a manner that is acceptable. Mr. Speaker, due to these current solutions and innovations in Parliament, I think we are creating an environment that is also friendly to our environment. Imagine the number of traffic jams we avoid if the ones that we can conduct virtually, then we ensure that we conduct virtually. Then people, avoid traveling to one place to ensure that at least they can still participate, deliberate, contribute to the debate about that. And then, of course, committees can even cover a lot of grounds in terms of what they are able to do if this, this method of transacting committee business continues with just a slightly bit of tightening. I think we will go places and cover a lot of ground in terms of what we are able to deliver. Mr. Speaker, and I urge also in terms of I was surprised that the mess was not part of our standing orders, and I think that should be. If it is, we have parliamentary traditions and practices that happen within the Commonwealth countries. If that is not in our chambers, then I think that is something that needs to appear in the amendments of our next standing order, so that it is taken care of. Or let's call a committee so that is part of this amendment, and then we dispense with that one, Madam Speaker. I thank you very much. For allowing me to contribute, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, although you called me Madam Speaker. Okay. I now therefore call upon the mover to reply.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. May I take this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to thank the senators for their wonderful contributions. I want to thank Senator Dr. Agnes Zani, who seconded this motion in a very articulate manner. She's a wonderful member of the committee. I want to thank Senator Nima Musuruve for wonderful contributions. I want to thank Dr. Alice Milko for expanding on the issues raised. And I want to thank Senator Faria Ali for giving us a very detailed analysis. Mr. Speaker, I think times like this are times when we have to make a difference. And the document that was presented by the committee was to help us, facilitate us to be able to transact our business at a time like this. And it is true that the committee looked at each and every aspect of our participation, both in the House and in the committees. And we want to assure Kenyans that the pandemic is not going to stop us from transacting our businesses. We will adopt, we will be flexible, and we'll make sure that all members have their rights to represent their counties, to represent their delegations, and to be able to do presentations on time. With those remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to move.
Thank you very much. Now, fellow senators, this is not a bill that concerns counties. So I put the question that the senators do now adopt the motion as per the order paper. Will as many of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many of the contrary opinion say nay? Oh, I'm being guided here. Sorry, you allow me because I'm new. I'll have to read again. Please, senators, I beg your pardon. I put the question that, pursuant to Standing Order 252 and 255, the Senate approves the third report of the Procedure and Rules Committee on amendments to the Senate Standing Orders to facilitate virtual sittings of the Senate and its committee thereof, laid on the table of the Senate on Tuesday, 16th June 2020, and pursuant to the provisions of Article 124(1) of the Constitution and Standing Order 255 and 257, 1, resolves to amend the standing orders to, as contained in Appendix 1 to the report, and 2, orders that the amendments to the standing order as contained in Appendix 1 to the report shall come into effect upon approval. Will as many of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 10, Committee of the Whole. The Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission Amendment number 3 Bill, National Assembly Bill number 35 of 2019.
Thank you very much. Members, fellow senators, as you can see from the order paper, we may not be able to transact the orders number 10, 11, and 12, and so they stand deferred. Honorable senators, it's now 6:30 p.m., time to adjourn the Senate. The House, therefore, stands adjourned until Tuesday, 28th June 2020 at 2:30 p.m.